It is Wednesday, even though I woke up and thought it was Thursday. Here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Across from me is the best producer that we could have during the stream, Carlene Bragg.
Thank
sorry,
you,
Jeff.
Nick. Hi.
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
I know you didn't ask me, but I said it. I'm doing
you know
well.
I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's been busy. We were kind of crunching up into the show moments before the show.
Truly.
So it's like, we're in the show.
We're here.
Kind of catch my breath for a second. So thank you again for joining us. We have a busy show. We have a lot going on, a lot of live things happening, a lot of developing stories, even a special interview that I teased to during our 9 to 11 stream. I'll let you guys hang around for that one a little later. But let's get to our top headlines. Off the top, these are our top headlines for the day. So one, and we will get to Jesse Pierre just to get some more information on this in a moment, but there are calls for transparency and a death investigation there in Gaston County. So this morning there was a press conference, quote, seeking justice for Ariana Baldwin. She was 6-year-old who passed away recently there in Dallas, North Carolina. Again, that's in Gadsden County. The reports that we got, accidental drowning, but the family and folks representing the family are asking for justice and further investigation and transparency into that death. Also, we're following nationally, and you've probably seen it everywhere, this scary situation. We're talking about tsunami waves that have reached Hawaii, California, and Washington State after one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. I mean, man, if you've seen the video, this is, again, some scary stuff that I saw this morning just waking up. The 8.8 magnitude trembler struck off Russia's remote Far East and sparked tsunami warnings, and evacuations across the Pacific. So we are keeping our eye on that. It looks like from what Carlene, you can chime in here, things have kind of settled down there.
They've eased up, for sure.
Okay. So again, if that's something that we will continue to update you on, that's impacted Hawaii, California, and Washington State there. And below, NTSB hearing that is, I believe, is still underway right now. And this is involving that tragic mid-air collision at DCA in Washington, D.C. It's been 6 months since
Right.
that crash, one of the deadliest mid-air collisions in our country.
Charlotte-based crew is on board.
Charlotte-based crew, a Charlotte woman also on the flight. So they are trying to pinpoint over the next 3 days what exactly went wrong during this mid-air collision. So those are our top stories that we are following for you today. But we want to get to the top story, the first story that I first brought up here, which is the call for transparency there in Gaston County involving the death of 6-year-old Ariana Baldwin. WCNC Charlotte's Jesse Pierre is live in Gaston County. Jesse, you were at that press conference this morning. Catch us up. What's happening there now? And again, there's calls for transparency, but fill us in on what's going on there.
Well, like you mentioned, this is about a 6-year-old Ariana Baldwin. This incident happened last year. She was dropped off to a friend's birthday party. This is in May of 2024. And the next morning, her family was alerted that she drowned, her and along with another child who was at this birthday party. And so now at this point, they just have some questions about, her death in general. They have hired an outside medical consultant to review like the autopsy and other medical records, and they say there are things that should be in these records that are not. They note that things like no water in her ear, or that her skin wasn't wrinkled, or that her clothing wasn't wet. None of these things were in any of the reports, which would be consistent with if there was a drowning. They also say that there were other signs of trauma that were reported on one report and not another, like some bruising, scratches, and a dent on her forehead. And they feel like these are things that should be investigated, and that they question again, how or what happened when their child was at this birthday party. Now, we do have an autopsy report. We do have a medical examiner report. And we did also contact the DA and have a statement from them. And we're still kind of going through all of those paperworks, but at this time, they report that there were nothing suspicious, and that this was a drowning situation. However, the family believed there was more to the story, and they had over a dozen people, maybe like 24 family members and so forth, with signage and photos of Ariana. They wore shirts with her photo on it, and they want the case reopened, and they also are asking for every document. They're filing a court order today to have any document related to her death released to them, so that they can review them or have an independent party review them. They again feel that there is more to the story, and that they are asking for transparency in this case. But again, we'll go through all of those documents, and we'll continue to ask questions, and we'll have the statement from the DA at 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock tonight. Nick?
All right, that's Jesse Pierre live in Gaston County. Again, a lot to sort through in this death investigation. And again, the family's calls for justice there. And as Jesse mentioned, you can catch her at 4 and 5 o'clock. She has a lot to get through, a lot to sort through today. So I'll let you go, Jesse. Thank you for your time. All right, again, that is Jesse Pierre live for us on the stream on this investigation. And again, with the family and their representatives, their attorneys are calling for, in their pursuit of, quote, transparency and for justice there. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, another top headline that we're following, the NTSB hearing regarding that mid-air collision in D.C. at DCA Airport. 6 months ago, a Charlotte crew was on board that flight. A Charlotte woman also on board on that flight as well, wasn't a part of the crew there. But again, they're trying to pinpoint exactly what happened over the next 3 days. Let's take a listen into what's happening right now.
Features Command in the Combat Capabilities Development Command Aviation and Missile Center, in a group called the Systems Readiness Directorate. So Army Airworthiness Authority is delegated from the commander of Aviation and Missile Command to the director of the Systems Readiness Directorate. So I report through Futures Command, not through the program.
My apologies. I thought earlier in the testimony you said my bosses, and you pointed to the left.
Oh,
So often, the acquisition, we will task them to give us independent recommendations. That's probably why the gesture might have been that way. So when I tasked Mr. Brown's organization to give me a recommendation, that was probably, if I recall, maybe.
Have you tasked his organization to give you any other recommendations regarding this accident?
Many, yes, sir.
What were they?
I'd have to go through the records. I'd be happy to provide you all the taskings we've done. I believe we've shared.
Are there a lot of tasks, a few tasks, 2 tasks?
There's many tasks. When Mr. Parker would make a recommendation, we would funnel it through our program executive officer, General Phillips, and then we'd make sure we get all the requests from this acts investigation, give it highest priority, and make sure that we get it tasked and recorded per saving the records for this investigation.
Okay. Will you be on another panel, Mr. Rosenberg?
No, sir, but I'll be here all week.
We can recall.
You think? Okay. I'm going to be done for.
Well, okay. I have a few just that I want to make sure I get back to. For Sikorsky, what's the prime item developments? What is a prime item development specification?
That is the document which, with the government, conveyed its requirements to us.
Okay, and when you're doing testing and you certify your, it goes through design and certification, correct? Your helicopters?
It's designed, and then we provide the reports. Ultimately, the Army has airworthiness ownership.
And so the documents you provided, does it include all these allowable allowances for errors?
The report that we've cited to the investigative team identifies the error curves for altitude, yes.
The report, and that was provided to the Army?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay, so my question is, was FAA aware of any of this? Or the testing that was done, was that a surprise to the FAA of what was done and what the outcome was?
I do not know.
Oh, I'm not asking you.
Sorry.
I'm actually asking the FAA. You should not answer that question.
Which testing are you referring to?
The tests that were done on May 15th on the formation flight.
And
I'm sorry, let me clear. The report I was talking about was from
Yeah, I know,
1983.
I know.
Okay.
I'm not, this is a totally different question. I'm getting a few of my straggler questions here.
yeah, so I'm familiar with those reports that came out of the May 15th battalion flight tests. I did not have access to any of the, I'll say, the original Sikorsky data to form any opinion on the results.
Okay, thank you. Member Graham. Member Inman.
Yeah, I'd just like to go back to Mrs. Lewis. I think all the board members were offered, and I believe we all took the opportunity to do a simulation in the Lima or the Mike model and to wear night vision goggles. And it was very apparent as we were doing that, the instructor pilots next to us were talking us through what they would see. So we've actually seen the entire route, which is pretty disturbing whenever you look at it that way. My question to you is, if they were talking to us and we're looking through night vision goggles, you have to look out of the night vision goggles, if I'm correct, to be able to check your altitude?
Yes, that would be correct.
And earlier you said that you'd be checking your radar altimeter and your baro altimeter if you're at an MSL of 200?
Yes.
Is it a complicated task to be looking at two?
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Serderman. That was that hearing. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties with the shot that happens from time to time here on Live Impact News. Sometimes the shot just goes out. I mean, we're dealing with technology, so it happens. But here are some of the notes that we have got so far. So according to the NTSB, the Army chopper involved in this crash was above altitude limit. Now, that collision happened back in January, 6 months ago. 67 people killed. Charlotte-based flight crew and a Charlotte passenger were on board. This is day one of the 3-day hearings that are hearing that is underway in D.C. We have the shot back. Let's take you back to it now live.
As I had stated before, I haven't flown this particular route, but at that low of an altitude, in my experience, I would want to know the route that I was on, that close to the ground, and not have to be looking inside the aircraft in an iPad.
So with the instruction as a standardization pilot, would the instruction be to not have aviators look at their iPad, which has the charts on it?
In my experience, at that altitude, I would not want someone inside the aircraft looking at an iPad.
Well, can we hold until panel 3 on
Yeah,
that
that's
one?
fine.
And then if you'd like, we could recall the witness
Okay.
for that panel.
And I realize you may not have flown this route, I apologize. Have you had a chance to read all of the docket material that we've released, Mrs. Lewis?
I've reviewed all of the document material for the air data systems and altimeters.
Did you find anything disturbing in what you read?
In my opinion, the amount of clearance between the helicopter route and potentially the altitude of an aircraft passing over top of it was concerning.
I hope so. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Now, I'm going to go back to the technical panel to see if they have other questions. And then my understanding is, because I'm getting texts from the team, that there are some party questions. So I want to make sure we are within schedule, so I want to make sure everybody's questions are answered. So we'll go back to technical team, then we'll come back to the parties.
This question's for Mr. Rosengren. Previously with the flight data recorder, you had mentioned that when the data is downloaded, it's looked for reasonableness. Is there a standard for reasonableness with the FDR data?
So just for clarification, we don't download the FDR data. We download the HUMS data, which is in the data card, but they come from the same remote data concentrator, so we're confident that they're similar, minus a few recording rate differences in hertz. So we download the HUMS data. I'm not aware of any standards. I can get back to you if I find out anything different. One thing does come to mind. So the 3 parts that I did mention, there are some vibration standards we look for to make sure that those 3 parts aren't exceeded. But outside of those three parts that we track, I don't know of any particular standards we use.
Okay. We'd appreciate it if you could get us that information. And particularly if the pressure altitude data is looked for and if there's a standard for what's considered reasonable for that parameter. Jumping a bit, my next question is for Mrs. Lewis. This is a scenario-based one, based on what the chairwoman asked about flying over the Potomac River route. If you had a route ceiling of about 200 feet and you were to look at your barometric altimeter and see about 160 feet, but then saw on your radar altimeter about 280 feet, how would you triage that situation in your experience?
In my experience, so if the barometric altimeter is reading 160 feet, you're saying, and the radar altimeter is reading significantly higher than that, I would still, my primary concern on the MSL route would be staying below the 200 feet. And I would definitely, take note of that and maybe write the aircraft up for some, maintenance action. But at that particular time, I would, as long as there was nothing wrong with the aircraft before we took off as far as the field elevation and the barometric altimeter, I would, continue to assume that I was below that 200-foot MSL.
Thank you. And then my last follow-up question is, I think Mr. Bradham would be best suited, but Mr. Rosengren can chime in as well. Based on the discussions today for the answers that we've received today in panel 1, there have been limitations identified with the accuracy of barometric altimeters just as a technology. They're mechanical instruments compared to newer air data computers and more modern technology. So knowing that based on our testing and just based on experience that these older technologies have these limitations that can based on our testing and just based on experience that these older technologies have these limitations that can create
to talk on the route design and the amount of allowable separation, but clearly, when you take into account, there's standards for pilots to maintain altitude, there's standards, for the altimeter error, and as I thinking about this, I don't think that we envision a situation where, well, prior to this incident, myself personally, in my experience, I wouldn't have envisioned a situation where you'd be operating on barometric altimeter, with less than a 500-foot separation. But I think if you're asking if we're kind of relooking how we operate in the national airspace, I don't, with the exception perhaps of the correction for the ESSS configuration, I don't believe there's any deviance from what's accepted on the civil side as well. I mean, the military requirements, the 70-foot check is more stringent than the 75-foot check. The mil spec 25 feet of position error is more stringent than the civil 30 feet of position error. So with that one exception, I think we're still operating inside the requirements.
And would there be any considerations to selecting certain models that have newer technologies or more accurate instrumentation versus older models in flying certain missions based on, again, known limitations with route ceilings or proximity to civil aircraft in the national airspace?
Yeah, I think that's an operational question, and I don't know that I could speak to that.
Is there someone here that can, as a witness?
I think it'd probably be best to wait for more operational, experienced witnesses to give more expert testimony.
Thank you.
Yes, just one follow-up question. Mr. Rosengren or Mr. Bradham, given your knowledge of the various electronic devices on the UH-60L model, are there systems that are currently installed that record the helicopter's position and either radar or geometric altitude over time that could be used for operational data monitoring for safety assurance purposes?
So we do include the radar altitude in our parameter data and the flight data recorder and the HUMS data, so that can be used. We don't record the GPS data.
Okay, and does that, where do those data go?
So that data goes to the same places, the flight data recorder and the health and usage monitoring system. I'll call it a card, PCMCA card. So those are downloaded to that integrated vehicle health monitoring system.
Okay, but who receives those data?
So those are downloaded after mission day, as I mentioned before, by the operational units, and then they're uploaded to the cloud so that we can access it as an Army enterprise.
Okay, so at a higher level, the Army monitors those data?
The Army has access to it at a higher level, yes, as well as operationally.
Could those data be used to determine if battalion helicopters are exceeding the maximum altitudes on the DC helicopter routes?
Yeah, so the information that's recorded, so you have radar altimeter that's recorded, but you don't have terrain being recorded, which you would need. The recorded pressure altitude out of the system, it's very difficult to map the recorded pressure altitude to the pilot's barometric, what the pilot's actually physically seeing. So the recording in the hum system is not recording from the pilot's altimeter the way the transponder is. You're recording from a transducer that's on the same static line, but not connected to that instrument. So although they have some of the same errors, the instrument error that's in the pilot's instrument and the error that's in the transducer recorder path, those are different sets of errors.
Yeah,
and so in some cases, when those errors are close to each other, you get good agreement. And in some cases, when those errors are not close to each other, you get significant disagreement. But unless you have a reference measurement, you can't parse that out.
Yeah, I'm not asking about comparing the two types. What I'm asking is, does it contain, it sounds like it does record radar altitude. Does it record position?
It doesn't record latitude and longitude. Is that what you mean by
Yes.
position? No, but it does record the parameters needed to reconstruct the flight. However, you do need a known data point. As our NTSB friends did here, they knew the data point that we took off from on the flight, and so they were able to reconstruct the May 15th flight from that known data point. But it doesn't
Okay.
include absolute time or absolute position.
So it would require considerable analysis.
It would require considerable analysis and considerable note-taking on at least a known reference point.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
No more from the technical panel. Chairwoman Hamady.
Thank you. We're going to go in the same order. Alpa.
Thank you, Chairman. The first question we have is for Mr. Cooper. If barometric tolerances were tightened, would Sikorsky be able to support modification to these systems used in rotorcraft, even if it required retrofits or redesigns to the pitot-static systems?
For which model?
For any. But specifically in this case, it could be, the Lima or the Micro going forward, whatever it might be.
Tighten to what limits?
If they were just tightened, say, we'll give you a number, say, plus minus 50 feet or something for field elevation barometric altimeter checks.
For the Lima, some, again, because it's a compilation of errors, as has been stated, it would require changing out of the government furnished provided indicator. So with that indicator, there's some limitations as to where you can tighten tolerances. For the others, it is plausible that we could analyze requirements and determine alterations to the probes. So plausible, but again, we would need the exact requirements. It's kind of hard to provide an answer, for just a broad.
Of course. But so you're saying it would be possible, but it would have to be analyzed.
Yes, and the configuration, like I said, the external storage support system configuration has a larger error, and need to understand how that applies also.
Thank you. Next question for Chief Warrant Officer Lewis. In your opinion, should any considerations be given to using different helicopter model types and low-altitude routes located in congested areas?
As I stated before, I've flown the different variations that the Army has of the Black Hawk. I have not flown in the DC route structure. I have flown both the Mike and the Lima in low altitude, and based on my experience and not having flown here, I don't want to make a recommendation. I feel it's outside of my experience of which one's best suited to fly here.
Okay, understood. Thank you. That's all from Alpha.
Thank you, FAA.
I don't have any questions, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much, NACA.
Chairwoman, we have no further questions. Our questions have been answered, and I'd like to thank the panelists today. Thank you.
Thank you. PSA.
Thank you. A couple operational questions real quick here. In your experience, Ms. Lewis, flying along, your co-pilot or instructor pilot voices a different altitude than you have of 100 feet. Is that any area of concern for you?
I would, if an instructor pilot Are you asking if they told me to adjust my altitude by 100 feet, would I do so?
If you call 300 feet and he calls you, I got you at 400 feet, would that be an area of concern for you?
100 foot of difference would not be a large area of concern. The first thing I would do would be to make sure we both had the same altimeter setting, and then address the situation going forward from there.
How much would it take to be
A couple hundred would be a concern in flight.
Okay. And I guess going back to the low levels, if you're on a 200-foot MSL route, would 100 feet be a concern then?
100 feet in what regard? 100-foot difference between the pilot and the co-pilot's altimeters?
Yes.
100 feet would still be, we would still have that 100-foot window, plus or minus 100 feet to maintain altitude.
Okay. Sorry, my next question. An example you were given by the tech panel, you said if the barrel altimeter was 160, radar altimeter displayed significantly higher, over 200 feet, you would continue to rely on the barrel altimeter to conclude you were below 200 feet. Can you explain why you would fall back or use the barrel altimeter as primary?
In my experience, if the barometric altimeter checks out good on the ground before I take off, and as we stated before, pilots generally, they're not out flying doing math between the barometric altimeter and radar altimeter, adding up altitude differences and considering that during flight. So as long as it was good on the ground before I took off, I would continue to assume that my barometric altimeter was accurate.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Sikorsky.
One quick follow-up question. Mr. Cooper, just to clarify, you said that the pitot probe location on the Black Hawk was determined primarily by Army operational and performance requirements for the Black Hawk. Is that correct?
No, I said that those feed into the consideration of its location, right? You know, the available real estate on the aircraft, the required operational envelope of the aircraft, and what other equipment and considerations would normally feed into that selection. You know, I honestly have to say in the late 1970s, I don't know why they picked the exact location, other than various other military products of that time, including those delivered to the Army from Sikorsky, had their probes in an above cabin location.
So I think you're also saying that other military aircraft at that time had probes in that location as well.
Correct. The CH-53, the H-3, and the S-54 crane, X-64 crane had those upper locations also.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Mr. Cooper.
U.S. Army.
Just one follow-up question, Madam Chairman. For Mr. Gant, we've talked a lot about altimeter errors and the deviations that are within the acceptable ranges. Are these unique to the UH-60 Lima, or is this consistent in commercial and general aviation across the national airspace?
It's across all fleet types. The physics doesn't change, although between the FAA and the military, we might have slightly different requirements. You know, maybe just by way of background, for transport category airplanes, the position air requirement is the same, plus or minus 30 feet per thousand, or per 100 knots, excuse me. And that's been in place since 1958.
No further questions.
Thank you. Can you pull up that chart again, Brian? Okay, so I will ask this question of Mr. Cooper. The model of helicopter that was involved in the collision, understanding that there are different requirements when you're ordering, is this model generally sold to other branches of the military?
There's UH-60 derivatives to the other branches of the military, yes.
How about outside the military?
There are international customers.
They're international. Okay, thank you very much. And is there a difference on where the pitot probes are for the mic?
No, there's not.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask Mr., I don't know if it's for Mr. Bradham or for Mr. Rosengren, I just wanted to go back to what you're working on for the flight manual and the safety alert. Did I hear you right, that you are focused on the Lima with the ESSS and the outboard fuel tanks?
So, ma'am, it applies to the mic as well. So it applies to the,
With the outboard fuel tanks?
yes, ma'am, with the ESSS wings and one tank on each side is the configuration that has been tested historically, and that's where we have good data on that particular configuration.
And that's what you're focused on for the policy change?
Yes, ma'am, for the
Or
ESSS
for the alert? Yeah.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
any sort of change to the flight manual?
Yes, ma'am.
The reason why I'm asking is if I'm looking back at the formation flight, for the 12th Battalion, I mentioned the numbers, the difference between the barometric altimeter was 1,070 feet and the radio altimeter was 1,200 feet, off by 130 feet. That was for the ESSS. The lead helicopter and the third, I believe, were the clean ones, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Correct.
Okay. So they don't have the outboard fuel tanks.
Correct.
My question is, the barometric altimeter on the lead helicopter showed 1,090 feet, radio altimeter 1,180 feet, with a difference of 90 feet. On the third helicopter, it was 1,100 feet and 1,180 feet with 80 feet of difference. Does that concern you at all?
So, ma'am, so first you can explain those discrepancies, and if I could just talk through it just very quickly. So that delta that you see in those aircraft, if you take their how far those aircraft were from field elevation on the ground, and you assume that's a good approximation of its instrument error, and then you add the position error to that, and then you add the temperature effect, because on that day they were flying they were flying a warmer than standard temperature, which has, when you're trying to compare radar and barometric altitude, you have to correct for the temperature. So there's 36 feet of that roughly is a temperature effect. But so for those aircraft, if you take those standards, and I apologize, I'm flipping through my notes to get the exact numbers on the aircraft, but I have them for all the aircraft on that test. So for example, ma'am, so for aircraft number 1, it was 45 feet low on the ground. The position error adds 7 feet low, and then the temperature adds 36 feet low, which is 88 feet, which is close. So what you have is a case where you have 3 different effects all in the same direction.
Correct.
And then for aircraft, for the second aircraft, the one that was ESSS.
Those are the ones I went through before. A lot of those I went through before.
Yes, ma'am.
And then there are differences, obviously, from this chart in the allowable errors in the instruments, or in different components, correct?
I'm sorry, ma'am, say that again?
The chart, some of those stack up, too.
Yes, ma'am. So some of those do. So the static system, the first 2 you see there are position error.
Yep.
One is military, one is civil. And then in the barometric, so for example, the scale error is the aneroid capsule error.
Okay, can I don't need to go through all of these.
Yes, ma'am.
We've already gone through all of these. The question I'm asking is you have a difference of 80, difference of 90. I understand there's temperature fluctuations. I understand there's allowable instrument error. What I'm getting at is, would you be concerned if this mid-air collision didn't happen and you knew, you had 75 feet of separation between the glide slope and the east bank of the Potomac?
Yes, ma'am. I'd say prior to this incident, that would not, I don't believe, have concerned me significantly. Understanding the vertical separation that existed in this case, yes, that would concern me.
Can I ask one more question? Was there at any Does anyone, and I'm going to ask everyone to answer this question, were there any efforts by the Department of Defense or Army to get helicopter Route 4 back in place after the Secretary did the work, thank you, of taking it off the map?
I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't know. That's not a
Does anyone
an
else
area of my
know?
expertise.
I don't know either, ma'am.
I don't know, ma'am.
FAA, Sikorsky. Okay, thank you. Member Graham? Member Edmund? Does the technical panel have anything? We've got time.
No, ma'am, we're good.
Okay, then we're going to go ahead and break for lunch. We will be back at 2:15. And just a reminder for the staff, lunch is served upstairs for all you all involved with this hearing. Thank you so much.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. The hearing right there, NTSB hearing underway. They're taking a break. They're taking a lunch break. Again, that hearing is regarding that mid-air collision at DCA Airport in Washington, D.C. that killed 67 people. Charlotte-based crew was on board along with the Charlotte passenger. As soon as this comes back up and it continues, we will bring it to you here on Live Impact News. All right, let's shift gears now. It is hot outside. Good news. It's getting cooler. It's getting cooler, y'all. It's getting cooler.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
It's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm trying to make weekend plans right now. I know it's Wednesday, but I'm starting to think. I don't know what it's going to be. Got to take advantage of it when
You
it's
gotta
not.
make some plans outside.
Got to. So, or make some plans because you got to walk outside to get back inside.
Right.
So, I don't know. We'll figure it out. But for now, let's check in with our forecast with meteorologist Majestic Storm.
Well, good Wednesday afternoon to you. I'm WCNC meteorologist Majestic Storm, and at least we're not weather alert today. You know what that means? It means it won't be nearly as hot and not quite as humid. Ultimately, yes, it's still going to be hot and humid. It's summertime, but we're not in that dangerous range. Back to right around where we should be for this time of the year. Low to mid 90s over the next couple of days, and each afternoon and evening we'll still be watching for pop-up showers and thunderstorms. Yes, that does include today. As we're heading into our Friday, you do need to be weather alert on Friday. That's going to be our next WCNC weather alert day because we're concerned that some storms that could form on Friday could bring the possibility of flooding, even flash flooding, and it's mainly going to be for the later half of our Friday. And then this weekend, who's ready for a cool down? I know many of you are raising your hand. It's not just going to be a slight cool down. I mean, I'm talking about a big, dramatic change in our weather pattern. Let's ease you into the afternoon, though. This is what the rest of the day will look like. Increasing cloud coverage, temperatures still warm, again topping off into the 90s, but with more cloud coverage, we're also going to be watching for the opportunity for scattered showers and thunderstorms. Still muggy out there, though, so once you add in the humidity on top of our air temperature, still going to feel like we're back into the triple digits between 3, 4 o'clock. About 101 is where we'll top off today, so be mindful of that. Again, yesterday we hit 95 degrees. It was much better than those triple digit temperatures that we were kind of getting used to, and today I'm forecasting 92. Unless you're up in the mountains, this is where it has felt so nice. The perfect escape to get away from all the heat and humidity that we have had over the last several weeks at this point. Upper 70s, low 80s for our forecasted highs, and we do have those scattered showers ahead. This is not widespread rain. Not everyone will receive them, but we could still see pockets of heavy downpours. Upper 80s, low 90s as we're looking at the foothills across the Charlotte metro area, mainly into the low to mid 90s, 92 in Charlotte, Gastonia 92, 90 for Lincolnton today. Rock Hill 92 for your afternoon high, 93 as we're looking at Chester. As far as our heat, how many days in a row actually we've seen those daytime highs rise above 90 degrees. We're now at 23 consecutive days in a row, and this will be coming to an end before you know it. Look at this weekend's forecast. Can you believe that? Look at 79 degrees for our daytime high on Saturday, low 80s on Sunday, small rain chances, more cloud coverage. Still 3 more days where those daytime highs will rise into the 90s. Again, we should be at 90 degrees. That's our actual average for this time of the year. And then what a drop in those temperatures by Saturday. And it's because we have a strong cold front on the way. It's not just our daytime high, but even our overnight lows. Those early mornings are going to feel incredible, with mid-60s ahead. Precipitation chances, they will increase Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Remember, Friday is going to be our next weather alert day, and it's because we're concerned that we could see some flooding. Now today, there has actually been some changes. That area shaded in yellow here, that's where we could see pockets of heavy rain this afternoon and this evening with some of those storms. Low rain chances for Thursday, and then Friday, that's going to be the day where we're really watching for those pop-up storms that could provide some flooding. Here's 6 o'clock tonight. If you have any plans, scattered showers and storms, nothing we're not used to. Thursday starts out quiet. We'll do it all over again for our Thursday. But Friday, it's going to be a beautiful start to the morning, but by Friday afternoon and evening, after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we could see these storms train over the same place over and over again, which means we could get rain in the same place over and over again. So if you live in a flood-prone area, you know how it goes. We could see that rapid rise in rivers, streams, creeks. There's a last look at that 7-day forecast. Low 90s, 3 days in a row. Stay close to our WCNC weather team Friday night, as we will be weather alert.
All right, so yeah, we are weather alert on Friday due to a chance of storms. Make sure, again, as Majestic mentioned, keep that app handy, our app handy, and make sure you have WCNC Plus locked and loaded so you can know the changes in the weather so you can be safe out there when it's either hot or with the storms. All right, so we want to shift now to Washington, D.C. Senator Bernie Sanders out of Vermont is holding a press conference with nursing home providers to highlight the impact of Medicaid cuts in the big, beautiful bill, which is now law. Let's take a listen into what's being said right now.
A nurse that wants to engineer, they have worked most of their lives, and now they're sick. Quite frankly, they're ill, and they've spent their money down because of that illness. So Medicaid in the nursing home setting has become not only who pays for them to live with us, but who cares for them medically, who takes care of their medical needs. So my purpose today is just that, hopefully to speak from my heart and hopefully speak to other people's hearts. This is certainly not about politics. It is about policy and what is and should be sound policy in a society that is aging, that we should be preparing for more of those on the rolls. And coming from a sector, coming from an industry that I think we've been beaten up recently. You know, whether it was the threats of a staffing mandate, I'm glad they have at least been postponed. Whether it's the threats of immigration now, which in my case, 35% of my staff are immigrants. And then now on top of that, I would say the threat to our main payer source that keeps nursing homes open. So that's my appeal, and I hope, again, it falls on some hearts that can listen to it as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Heather Turbine-Pollard with Center Circle Adult Day Services in Richmond. Heather, thanks.
Thank you. Heather Turbine-Pollard with Circle Center Adult Day Services in Richmond, Virginia. We are a nonprofit and a proud member of Leading Age. And really, I'd like to talk about the unique niche that places like Adult Day and in-home and other support services that fall outside of nursing homes but are community-based. So these are home and community-based services. As the senator alluded to, these are electional and optional services for states then to dole out to local communities like me. It's a critical component. Our nonprofit, which is 50 years old, has been caring for largely moderate to severe dementia, those who are living with dementia and Alzheimer's, but are choosing to stay home, right? They're a community-based model that lets all of us, which is what I want and what you want probably, to age home as long as we possibly can. And so we serve 130 older adults at our facility. Medicaid is a large part of that. And currently, the reimbursement rate for the state of Virginia for Medicaid is $64.17. It is $150 a day for me to deliver that care. That is a math problem. And it's critical, and we're working with Leading Age on increasing that state reimbursement. But now, when we're faced with the chance of it getting reduced or eliminated, you can see, if you do the math along with me, how it may put home and community-based care folks like me out of business, who grew up from community, started by 5 churches in Richmond, Virginia, and have evolved into a center that's well-known and supportive services. Senator Sanders talks about the caregiver, and it's so important. I could probably ask you to raise your hand or think to yourselves as you're watching, who of us knows somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's who have cared for, right? We all have been touched by that. And so these caregivers are burdened with that. They're also working. 60% of our caregivers work, and they need a community-based option by which to send their loved one. So Adult Day, though it's little known in the long-term care services continuum, is a social model that offers health monitoring, a very important part of a staff that's well qualified to deal with dementia-friendly practices and education. We are an extended member of that family. Community-based care models like ours are extended care for families. So a very critical part of the component at a time when some others in front of me said we should all be turning up the dial on all the services across our continuum that can support older adults and their caregivers, caring for them as they age. It's not the time to take that away from folks. So thank you for the opportunity.
Heather, thanks first. Let me start off. I think we'll have some questions coming. I want to start off with a question myself, because I can't imagine that there are too many jobs more difficult than taking care of people with dementia or Alzheimer's. Can somebody say a word? What does that take out of, what does that require out of a caregiver?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of our caregivers. We talk with them every day. It is a joy. They would want me to say that, but it's also a heck of a burden. The psychological toll it takes when your husband no longer remembers your wedding day or your children's names. It is very, very heart-wrenching for them on a daily basis. And you can imagine sitting in that space with, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? In addition to some of the behaviors, once you've met someone living with Alzheimer's, you've met one person living with Alzheimer's, right? My grandmother resorted to German, her tongue, which she never spoke to us, and completely forgot English. So that's what it looked like for her. For others, it looks very different. And so thank you for the opportunity, because, and I hope I've represented caregivers. It is a joyful job at times, but soul-wrenching at many other times. And they don't know how to deal with the disease as well. Like some of our staff people, long-term care service staff, we get trained to do that work, and families don't.
Okay. Any questions for Meteor? Yes.
I'm curious, you talked a lot about how these cuts are going to be negatively impacting senior care. I'm curious what cuts specifically, what provisions in the bill are you most concerned about when it comes to?
Nursing homes receive what percentage of their revenue from Medicaid? 70%? That's what I'm concerned about. All right, does anybody want to specifically answer what these cuts will mean?
So in the nursing home setting, and I'm actually from the state of Georgia that has not been as impacted, particularly in the provider tax side. But the retroactive Medicaid provision, which we call Medicaid pending in the industry, is a huge. It's gone from 90 days to 60 days for a 60-day period. We barely get someone approved now in a 90-day period. So going to 60 days, I can't see how that happens. During that period of time, we're actually giving free care. So if that person's not approved, the other huge concern I have is the bill obviously is pushing the responsibility straight onto the states and decide the states. And again, I come from a state that I think has been on the right side and will continue to be on the right side of aging. But nationwide, we don't have many states that even have that fiscal position that Georgia has to be able to fill in those gaps. So again, any adjustments may not necessarily be cuts, right? But these are adjustments that would be extremely difficult. Even that retroactive process, we, the nursing home, is who is applying or assisting the individual to apply. That takes time. Most of these individuals, many living with dementia, they're not the best historians. We have to check their finances. We have to see if there are any other bank accounts. So it's a process that we do on behalf of the elder. So very, very onerous indeed.
And all of this, once again, starts at a moment when nursing homes are struggling today, struggling to get staff, struggling to pay staff the wages you would like to pay, et cetera. All right, other questions? Anybody else? All right, well, let me thank our guests today. I want to thank them. We've heard the word moral, and it's right. It seems to me, and I think to all of you, that in the richest country in the world, we should take care of our most vulnerable citizens with the respect and compassion and dignity that they are entitled to, often, as you've indicated, after working their entire lives helping our society. And that is not the case today. So I want to thank you all for what you've done, and let's go forward together. Thank you all.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right there is Senator Bernie Sanders, independent out of Vermont. He's wrapping up that press conference, or that press conference just wrapped up live in Washington, D.C., discussing the impacts of the One Big Beautiful Bill legislation is impacts on Medicaid. Again, having a press conference there. Nursing home providers were also there at that press conference. All right, we'll shift away from that. It is 1:24. Thank you for staying with us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. So I mentioned this during the 9 to 11 stream. I kind of teased it during the beginning of the stream. We have a special guest. Man, Carlene Special. You can get excited, Carlene.
Real special.
All right, so let me
I'm very excited.
let me lay it out here. So the newly renovated Carolina Theater has a special performance on August 8th at 7:30 p.m. with a guy who was a singer, songwriter, producer, 5-time Grammy Award-winning artist. And he's going to be performing with another legendary guy, Adrian Crutchfield, who's a local guy. But the guy I'm talking about is CeeLo Green. CeeLo, it's here. CeeLo, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I got you. CeeLo, thank you for your time, man.
Of course.
My first question, man. What can folks expect from this performance? If they've never been to a CeeLo show, I know you're going to be on stage with Adrian Crutchfield, but what can they expect, man?
First of all, thank you guys for having me. And so to answer your question, you can expect, maybe a mixture of old, new, and maybe some future and beyond too, because we're on the brink of releasing new music. So I may do something special, like do something new and unreleased, or some little twists and turns and some added surprises. You just never really know. When I do my show, I like to call it radio station CeeLo Green. So no ads though. You know what I mean? Like no commercials, man. Just straight hits, all killer, no filler.
I love that. No, all killer, no filler. Hey, man. So I want to go back in time, man. It's almost been 30 years since Soul Food dropped, man. I know I was introduced to you from the Dungeon Family and the Goody Mob days, man. You're from Atlanta. How did that collective influence you? And talk about the impact of a guy like Rico Way. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace to my big brother, my mentor, my shepherd,
Rico Wade. He was such a key component and pivotal person in my professional and personal life. During that time, I guess I would have been considered an at-risk youth, trying to, find my way, knowing that I had a creative capacity, you know what I mean, like to rhyme and to sing and an assortment of different things, but nothing in a formal, fashion, and it was him and his generosity and selflessness that opened up his doors to his home that he resided in with his mother, God bless her soul, Miss Beatrice Wade, and then also his two sisters. And he let a host of us come and stay, and that includes myself, Big Boy, Big Boy Andre from Outkast, Big Rube, Sleepy Brown, just to name a few. I think there may have been 13 of us total on some occasions, more often than not, sleeping on the floor, in the home with him and his family. And Rico Wade was just a saint almost. You know what I'm saying? And a really sweet and special person. And he really set my professional life into motion, and I'm here because of his saving grace. And so I owe a large debt of gratitude to him. And of course, it was a very supportive and friendly and competitive environment, and you become a product of whatever environment, that you're dispositioned, and so yeah, so it kind of sharp. It was still sharpening skills. Still sharpening steel, and yeah, and I'm grateful to the brothers too to be around so many other talented individuals, talented in so many unique ways, and now in retrospect, we've created and contributed so much to modern culture, and especially to the culture and community of Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, if you spend any time, I'm just speaking to the viewers, if you spend any time in Atlanta, you know how much Rico Wade means to that community, man. A legend, a genius. I want to ask you, man, was it always intentional for you to evolve your style over the last 30 plus years at this point, man? Because Goody Mob days, Soul Food days, style is different from what it is
Yeah, no
now.
doubt. Yeah, I would definitely say it was intentional, but it wasn't deliberate. You know what I mean? Like it was a gradual uh, process and progress and evolution. Um, I think we had always kind of like affectionately considered ourselves to be the X-Men of Atlanta, and Rico Wade, of course, would be our Dr. Xavier, and the Dungeon was a school of exceptional youth. And so we were the mutants with the superpowers. I'm saying like normal exteriors, but exceptional interiors. Can you dig it? And so, um, I like to be a pleasant surprise, to those who are, keen and aware of me and what my ambition and what my, capacity is, and so, yeah, when I know that I've been, prompted and purposed and maybe even dared on a few occasions, yeah, I'm glad that I can rise to the occasion and show up and show out, for the sake of, the family that I represent and for the sake of, necessity, because I think that our culture and musical palette needs to be diverse and varied. And so I do things intentional for that to contribute just to kind of show and prove what's possible. Instead of impossible, I say I'm possible. Can you dig it? And so I think I've inspired many people, you know what I'm saying, like with my own acts of individuality in account, So yeah, man, I do it for the people. And I'm glad that I can. And so I would say very intentional and on purpose, definitely.
My man, I dig it. But here's the thing. Check this. So we got a style icon here in our studio right now. Carlene, she's my producer. She does a great job, man. I think she got you. She might got you beat. I don't know.
I can't touch Mr. Green's style.
She got a question for you, CeeLo.
I can't do it. I don't have the camera on me, but I did want to ask. Because you are such a man of style, you have never shied away from a headpiece, any sort of fabric, feathers, you name it, you've worn it.
Nope.
Do you have a favorite outfit among your amazing portfolio? Or maybe a favorite accessory?
Okay, so I'll try to make my answer short. When I was doing my first residency in Vegas, called Liberace, it was a playoff of Liberace. And
the greats of that time, they were so huge, so iconic. You know what I mean? You couldn't mistake them for anyone else, but besides themselves. Uh, I got a chance to be befriended by the Liberace Museum and Foundation, and I went over and I saw some of his artifacts that were being kept and preserved, pianos, chart music, outfits, etc. And I was like, wow, I would almost hope that some things that I could do could be important in that way, to be immortalized in that way, and someone saw it to be their duty to make sure that some of the things that I had done survived, long after, so. Yeah, no, I haven't been afraid of, because I was inspired by the Elton Johns, the Liberaces, the Madonnas, the David Bowies, the Sly Stones, the James Browns, the Earth, Wind and Fires, the Parliament Funkadelics and stuff like that. So I didn't really think I was doing anything new. I thought I was just doing something interesting, of a reincarnation, my best embodiment, for my generation. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of what gave me the audacity and the tenacity to do these things, because I felt like they had been done, and I felt like a lot of my idols and inspirations were still alive and well, and they were witnessing me, and I thought that it would be a homage to them, for them to see themselves come back to life in another person who was being perceived and received as a great in their own right. So that's kind of why I did what I did so confidently. But yes, I've worn everything from wigs to wedding dresses to feathers and boas and you name it. Like I've done it. Or I've tried to do it, and amazingly enough, I've taken those leaps and I've landed on my feet, and people can receive it. As an attribute of entertainment, because that's really all that it is. You know what I'm saying? And do I have a favorite outfit? I think I would say I would. I think I would say it's the Super Chicken outfit from the Grammy performance with Gwyneth Paltrow, and I was performing "Forget You" with the Muppets. You know what I mean? And so it was inspired by Elton John performance on the Muppet Show when I was a kid. You guys should go back and check it out. It's Elton John performing Crocodile Rock on the Muppet Show. If you go back, you'll see it, and then you do an A/B. It's almost identical. And of course, Elton John himself, he was enamored, he was humbled, and he was just elated that I would honor him in that way. So there you have it.
Oh, I'm a big Muppet fan, so I know exactly what Elton John outfit you are talking about. It is fantastic top to bottom, as are you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we get you out of here, man, you from Atlanta. I mean, man, you like right down. It's like a few hours away. Charlotte's a few hours away from Atlanta. It's right down 85, yeah. Man. When you come to Charlotte, man, what are some of your go-to spots?
I remember there used to be a store called Boris and Natasha, and we used to go in there and check out some of the cool alternative clothing and stuff like that. So anybody who's really from Charlotte, you'll know that store. I'm not sure if it's still around. Para? What was it? Para? Oh, the wife says para. But I got family that people don't know that Adrian Crutchfield is my cousin, so he's my actual family, and I have family, man. Like, so what's up to everybody over there in the Beatties Ford area? You know what I'm saying? I have some relatives that went to Johnson C. Smith and all of that.
Oh man, we didn't know that, dude. We didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's gonna be a family reunion on the 8th.
You know it. You know it. I still got family out there for sure.
Man, that's CeeLo Green. Man, dude, you've been so gracious with your time. Thank you for stopping by Live Impact News. Again, you can catch his cousin, Adrian Crutchfield, saxophonist, and CeeLo Green on stage here at the newly renovated Carolina Theater, Friday, August 8th, 7:30. Buy your tickets. I got the icon pulled up right now, so I'm trying to get, once we get to a break in the show, I'm trying to get my tickets.
Yeah,
so
now we got to get our tickets.
Now we got to get our tickets. So, CeeLo, man, again, thank you for your time, man.
You're welcome, and thank you guys for the hospitality. I see y'all on the 8th. Peace.
Yes, sir. Man, amazing interview right there. CeeLo Green, man, the legend there. And we learned something new.
We learned something new.
Had no clue that CeeLo and Adrian are cousins.
Our cousins.
And we were trying to get Adrian on the interview. We had some stuff. I just want to be transparent. I know we were trying to get Adrian on, but we'll try to get him on at a later date if we can.
For sure.
Love to talk to Adrian. We want to put some respect on his name. He's a legendary saxophonist. Worked with Prince. Worked with a guy like Charlie Wilson, Fantasia, Anthony Hamilton, Bette Midler. The list goes on.
Biggies.
Yeah, heavy hitter. He's a heavy hitter.
Yeah.
So that show is going to be great. I mean, he shot at Beatty's Ford.
Right.
Man. Okay, Johnson C. Smith gave them a shout out.
He knew what's up.
It's going to be a family. I had no clue. I didn't know. We didn't know. So it came as a surprise. You learned something new.
I'm tickled pink. He's a Muppets fan because you know me. I love the Muppets.
As soon as he said that,
like my face is I lit up. I'm a huge Muppets fan.
Oh man, this is one of the coolest moments here on the show.
Oh, for sure.
We've interviewed some amazing people.
I feel like tingly. I'm so excited.
Oh man, so yeah, and if you missed the interview, we will have that. Our digital team is awesome. We'll have that posted on our website and on our YouTube page as soon as we can. But man, a great moment there. So let's shift gears. Let's keep it light. Let's talk about the Panthers.
Something you love.
Something I love. I love the Panthers. We go from two things, from music, I love music, to the Panthers. I love the Panthers. So it is day 7 of training camp. Danielle Stein, Nick Carboni there at camp. We got a chance to chop it up with Danielle earlier during the 9 to 11 stream. Jane, Carlene, and I got a chance to talk to Danielle about what's going on at camp. Let's take a listen into that conversation from earlier.
Danielle Stein actually on the phone with us this morning from B of A. Danielle, how's it going?
It's going well. I believe it's day 7 is the lucky number today, but we are feeling good. It is actually, though, day 2 if you're using the metrics of days where they're in pads. So still kind of new in that regard because it's starting to feel a little bit more like real football out there.
Yeah, how are they looking past couple of days?
Yeah, things have been good. So they were in pads on Monday for the first time. Then they went back to wearing no pads yesterday, and then here they are again. They can only have a certain number of days where they're allowed to actually train wearing pads, so they do it kind of strategically, space them out a little bit, work on some things in between. So these days are the ones where we can expect the practices to be a good bit longer and definitely a lot more physical. We saw the last time that they were out there in pads, it ended up resulting in a little bit of a scuffle. Chuba Hubbard and Trevin Wallace getting into it at the end of that day. So I think the team, though, likes that. Of course, they like that neither of them got hurt to any large degree, but they like the physicality that comes on days like this where it feels like it's really starting to emulate a real football game.
Yeah, certainly making an impression, and the energy's got to be welcome. You know, people get fired up. Anyone making a strong impression for you?
I think today the thing that I wanted to make note is there's a couple guys who are actually not dressed for today, which I wouldn't say is too big of an alarm, but it is some people who we have been watching closely. One of them being Hunter Renfrow. It looks like he has a vet day, so he's out there right now, but he's wearing street clothes. He has, a t-shirt, a baseball cap on. He's one of 3 that I've made note of so far, as well as cornerback Mike Jackson, and also Pat Jones II. He just came over from free agency from the Vikings. All of them seem to be on vet days. Renfro's case is, of course, one that we're all watching really closely as that wide receiver room is starting to come together. It's that question is if we think Renfrow is going to be maybe that last one to get into that wide receiver group in the end, because we know the competition is pretty tight there. So, of course, we want to see as many looks of him as we can right now, but it's good to also give sort of days off for some of these vet players like him.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Sturtevant's joining us here in the Live Impact studio, Danielle, because he's our #1 Panthers fan in the newsroom. Talking about the wide receiver room.
Yeah.
Nick.
So I have a question, Danielle. You've been doing great work out there at training camp, you and Carboni, 1. But 2, it's been a while since we've had like big personalities on the team. And I feel like this year we have those personalities in Princely and Trevin Wallace, also Xavier Leggett. How has it for you been like covering those big personalities on the team?
I I think it's awesome. And it's so true. I do think it kind of is more of a, I mean, of course, there's always in sports been personalities, but part of me thinks that just like the era of social media and just some of the younger generations, as I sound old saying that, but people maybe even closer to my age bracket, you grow up around these social media lifestyles, and then you start to develop more of that personality yourselves. Like talking to Princely yesterday, he has such a personality, and he's the same as he is online too. So I think that kind of like endears yourself to fans in a way too, because you're more accessible and relatable too. Like he was saying, he doesn't want to be that guy who's just like a public figure. He wants to be able to interact with fans if he wants. A fan, even after that first day of training camp when Princely had that strip sack on Bryce, said, "Keep your dirty hands off of my quarterback." And he responded with a salute emoji, just, to break the ice and be funny about it. But that kind of barrier breaking, I think is pretty cool to see in this kind of era where we are right now in sports.
Speaking of Bryce, like he's probably appears to be like one of the quietest guys out there on the team and the biggest star on the team. How's he looking? I've been going through like X and Instagram, and there's been a lot being made about his connection with T-Mac. But how is Bryce like looking out there on the field?
He looks good. I feel like, of course, this is my first season covering the team, so my impressions are based off of this, just being a general NFL watching Bryce Young as well too, but he definitely just seems so confident where he is right now. He seems to interact with all the other guys that he comes across. I just saw him doing a handshake he had with T-Mac. He seems to have good rapport with so many different guys out there, and he's definitely just more of that leader. He seems to laugh. He seems to be a little bit more vocal in terms of like the fun aspect as well too. So it is good that we're starting to see some personality out of him. I mean, that position group around him with the wide receivers between Leggett, T-Mac, Jimmy Horn, like those are guys who, like you were talking about, they have big personalities too, and they're funny. And I hope at least that Bryce is kind of feeding off of that the more he becomes more comfortable as well. But no, Bryce is definitely just still endearing himself to the fans. I just saw some sweet photos of him walking his mom down the aisle. His parents had a vow renewal a couple weeks ago, and there were some nice photos coming out of that. People love to see Bryce in life outside of football too. But then when they see it translate onto the field where he's starting to show that personality a little bit more too, I think that's looking pretty good too.
You got to put some respect on my quarterback's name out there. Everybody out there, because you're talking about Heisman Trophy winning, quarterback from Alabama. He was the guy in high school. I think people forget about that, Danielle. Like Bryce is that guy.
Right, and he definitely started to prove that again towards the end of last season, and it's true. Maybe some people, you forget that once you maybe have a couple bad games, you forget about some of your previous accolades, but in the end, he's still someone who, at his time, was the best in the country, and I don't think the talent level has slipped by any means. Of course, just being in the NFL compared to college is a different game, but his motivation out there right now looks really good, and it looks like he's got, again, that relationship with Dalton looks fantastic as well, and he's just coming in with more and more confidence, and I think that might have been the piece that's been lacking in his game ever since he's been in the NFL. Is, of course, the skills might be there, but the confidence may have been still developing. So as he's going into another season, I think we can expect that trajectory to go even higher up.
Danielle, what's the itinerary look like today? And we know they're back in the pads, but more of the same.
Yeah, more of the same. We can expect a longer day out there on the field. Unfortunately for me, my little neck fan that I have just died, so I'm going to find as much shade and water and sunscreen as I can because long practice means I will be sweating out here. But no, we can expect to see a little bit more of some actual action, 11-on-11s, hopefully. And I think soon coming up, we'll be seeing a little bit more of those individuals, which obviously we love getting those videos out to you on social, seeing some of those receivers going up against the defenders, things like that. Those little individual position battles always look really good. Hopefully we'll see some of that, positive tension that we saw on Monday as well. Maybe not exactly a fight, but you want to see these guys starting to really get into that football football mindset. The guys do have a day off tomorrow, and I do know that Bryce Young will be taking part of a really cool event where he's going to be speaking to some local teens about mental health awareness, something that he's really passionate about, and comes from a family where his dad's a psychologist and his mom is a teacher. So the guys have the day off tomorrow, which will be great, and Bryce sounds like he'll be spending it doing some really good things in the community.
All right, good deal.
We gotta get her a neck fan.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. That's my first thing. I was like, can we get Danielle a neck fan? Like, I'll bring it to her. My girl needs some air.
Oh,
yeah, I forgot to charge it last night, and it's a struggle, but we find our shade when we can. I've got my my little Stanley cup with like 40 ounces of water, so we're staying hydrated, and they take good care of us out here. So, but it's definitely a scorcher.
I mean, it's at least a little bit cooler today.
Yeah.
Getting some relief.
The thing is, it doesn't feel it.
It doesn't matter, does it? I know. Easy for us to say. I'm cold in
we're
this
freezing
studio.
in a studio right now.
Yeah, I've got my blanket. That's how cold
my
it is.
gosh.
I know.
Let's trade.
Yeah, maybe for a moment before I thought out. Danielle Stein, thank you for joining us this morning. Enjoy today. Stay safe. Seek the shade. We'll talk to you soon here on WCNC Charlotte.
Most definitely. Thank you, guys.
Again, that was Danielle from this morning during our 9 to 11 stream here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I wonder if we got Danielle a neck fan at all.
We got to get our girl
We got to
fan.
get her a neck fan
We gotta
because
get her a
it's
fan.
too hot
It's
outside.
hot.
It's too hot. And she's going to be covering the pan. The season just started. I know it's training camp, but the season actually just started, really.
And it's not going to let up.
It's not going to let up.
I mean, I let up this weekend, but it's going to be right back to 90s.
It's going to get right,
week,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
let's get our girl a fan.
All right, let's shift gears now. Let's go to Louisiana, Monroe, Louisiana, where Representative Mike Johnson, House Speaker Mike Johnson, is hosting a press conference with the Monroe Chamber. Let's take a listen in.
Sustain and strengthen critical services in areas like Northeast Louisiana.
Yeah, this area, healthcare is a major industry. It's not just important for the health of people, it provides lots of jobs. The same is true in Northwest Louisiana and across the corridor, a big chunk of my district, all the way down south. I have about a third of the state by land area, and rural hospitals are a big part of that, as are the big, larger hospitals as we have here. So we've got to make sure they're properly funded, and we can deliver better healthcare over time with higher and higher quality at lower and lower cost if you build in efficiencies. There's a lot of ideas on the federal level on how to do that, but we did as much as we could in the big, beautiful bill. The budget reconciliation process is what we use to deliver this piece of legislation, and there are some limitations on what you can do. You have everything in a reconciliation bill has to be related in some way to reducing spending, reducing the budget, reconciling the budget, which is where the name comes from. And so we are limited in big policy changes that we can make. But what we try to do, for example, I mentioned shoring up the safety net programs is a piece of this. And in that, we also set aside a $50 billion fund for rural hospitals in particular, and underserved hospitals, to make sure they themselves have a pool of funds from which to draw if they get in dire straits financially. I think there's a larger health care reform package that is ahead of us on the horizon. There is a lot of talk being done, being handled right now about that, and the details of it are being put together. But we're certainly open to insights and counsel from local folks, hospital administrators, providers in the area, because you can sometimes see blind spots that policymakers in D.C. don't see. We've got some really smart people working on this, and I'm very optimistic we're going to be able to continue. It's on a trajectory, as we said, a series of steps to improve these things, and healthcare is high on the radar.
Okay, we've got time for a couple more. And this one, I think they want more of your suggestions. It says, with Meta bringing the largest data center in North America to our backyard, how can small businesses in Monroe, Ouachita Parish position themselves to benefit from this growth rather than be left behind? In what role do you see federal policy playing to support that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think, so far as I can tell, having talked to the local leaders here this morning, I think you're on the right track trying to anticipate what is coming and future growth. And I don't think, I pray this is true, and I believe it is, that this is not a one-time investment here. I think there's going to be more on the way. I really do believe that. I think it will spur further economic growth and opportunity for more and more people. And so to position yourself to be able to benefit from that and be a part of that change is the key thing. It takes a lot of strategic decision making. Now, the challenge we have on that is this is a brand new industry. I mean, we are in blue ocean territory, sailing in uncharted waters on AI, right? So it's hard in some ways to anticipate what comes next because we're literally inventing it as we go. Is the thing. I had Sam Altman, who is the head of ChatGPT and all that. He's one of the leading AI guys. He was in my office last week, sitting on my couch, and he was giving me a preview of the next gen that is going to be released, I think, in a number of weeks. And I won't relay to you some of the stuff he told me, but there is some mind-blowing technology that is like around the corner, like a couple of weeks from now, kind of stuff. And I always get a little bit nervous because I'm like, are we going to be living in a science fiction film here? He said, yeah, we just don't know which one it is yet. I'm like, oh, that's great. As a joke, somebody said that. It's not Terminator, okay? But look, it's going to change almost everything, according to these guys, and they know more about it than I do. But it's going to change all the industries in big ways and small ways. And so I'm proud that Louisiana is on the front edge of this, and this community is on the cusp of all these changes because I love the values of the people here, and I trust the values of the people here to help direct that bold new technologies that develops, and we'll have a say in that because you're going to be a big part of the production of it. So how that relates to the other businesses and kind of the ecosystem here, I suspect there'll be new businesses that pop up, and I think others will have to adapt. And I don't have all the playbook developed on that yet, but we're going to be doing that together. It's exciting, a little nerve-wracking at the same time, but I'll take this this level of excitement and opportunity over anything else we're seeing anywhere else. And we're blessed to have it. We're going to make the most of it. So we'll see. Well, I'll be a partner with you in brainstorming as this thing goes along. So yeah.
Okay, last question.
Yeah.
I've already read it, so. Amanda Edge with Energy and Mayor Ellis have both told me that you do, and you've kind of alluded to it here, a great impression of President Trump. And we'd kind of like to see more of that if you could.
Great. I'm not supposed to do this publicly.
You're just among friends.
Oh, yeah. And a bunch of TV cameras. Thank you very much. Yes. Imitation is the greatest form of flattery, okay? I'll tell you real quickly how we named the bill, the One Big Beautiful Bill, okay? Because we had some very erudite titles, like legislation. You could be very crafty on acronyms, and we had been working on this bill for like 15 months, and so we went in the Oval Office to have the final meeting before we dropped the legislation. And I'm sitting across the resolute desk from the president, and I'm in there. We have the vice president was there, J.D. Vance, and we had the majority leader Thune in the Senate, and I had Jason Smith, the chairman of Ways and Means, and several of us. And the president, we're telling him all the details of the final draft, and then he goes, "What are we going to call it?" And so Jason Smith goes, "Well, sir, we have a list of some very smart titles. We think we come, acronyms that will be so clever." And he goes, No. We just need to call it the One Big Beautiful Bill. And we all go, well, it's simple. And he goes, in fact, just think of it. He said, and you used this earlier. He goes, when they say Ohio State, they don't say Ohio State University. They say the Ohio State University. Like you said, the University of Louisiana. And he goes, so that's what take this down, Natalie. The One Big, Beautiful, and he says that. And so she prints it out, and they hand us an 8.5 by 11 page that says "The One Big Beautiful Bill" in like 72-point bold font across the paper. And we're all marveling at that. Wow, this is amazing. Yes. And he goes, "Now here's the thing. I think it needs an exclamation." I'm like, "Sir, I can't, sir. That's not a thing. We can't put an exclamation point in. I don't know, Mike. It really needs it. It's big. Sir, please just allow me this dignity. Don't put, And so I succeeded in that. We don't have an exclamation point, but it should have been like 3, right? Okay, because it's so big and it's so beautiful, and that's it seemed like a marketing gimmick, but now everybody says it, and the people who don't like the legislation have to say, in the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, which is great. So there's actually some genius to it. Do not ever underestimate the great deal maker. And I'll tell you one quick anecdote. So a week ago, I was at the White House for something else, and a staffer comes and runs and says, "Mr. Speaker, the president wants you in the Oval right now." I said, "Oh, I thought it was like an emergency." So I double time it, and I open the door, I walk into the Oval Office, and he's sitting there, and he has the entire Japanese trade delegation sitting in front. They're making the big trade deal with Japan, and they're all sitting in front of the Resolute desk. And the Treasury Secretary's there, and Commerce Secretary's there, some others. And I walk in, and he goes, he's speaking. These are the terms, and he starts, laying them out. And I
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. It looks like the shot froze. I mean, that's what happens with technology. Sometimes the shot freezes. We'll get you back there as soon as we can. That was House Speaker Mike Johnson at a press conference in Monroe, Louisiana. Let's take a look at the forecast. It's hot outside, but it's going to get cooler. Let's check in with Majestic Storm, meteorologist Majestic Storm, for a look at a full forecast.
Well, good Wednesday afternoon to you. I'm WCNC meteorologist Majestic Storm, and at least we're not weather alert today. You know what that means? It means it won't be nearly as hot and not quite as humid. Ultimately, yes, it's still going to be hot and humid. It's summertime, but we're not in that dangerous range. Back to right around where we should be for this time of the year. Low to mid 90s over the next couple of days, and each afternoon and evening we'll still be watching for pop-up showers and thunderstorms. Yes, that does include today. As we're heading into our Friday, you do need to be weather alert on Friday. That's going to be our next WCNC weather alert day because we're concerned that some storms that could form on Friday could bring the possibility of flooding, even flash flooding, and it's mainly going to be for the later half of our Friday. And then this weekend, who's ready for a cool down? I know many of you are raising your hand. It's not just going to be a slight cool down. I mean, I'm talking about a big, dramatic change in our weather pattern. Let's ease into the afternoon, though. This is what the rest of the day will look like. Increasing cloud coverage, temperatures still warm, again topping off into the 90s, but with more cloud coverage, we're also going to be watching for the opportunity for scattered showers and thunderstorms. Still muggy out there, though, so once you add in the humidity on top of our air temperature, still going to feel like we're back into the triple digits between 3, 4 o'clock. About 101 is where we'll top off today, so be mindful of that. Again, yesterday we hit 95 degrees. It was much better than those triple digit temperatures that we were kind of getting used to, and today I'm forecasting 92. Unless you're up in the mountains, this is where it has felt so nice. The perfect escape to get away from all the heat and humidity that we have had over the last several weeks at this point. Upper 70s, low 80s for our forecasted highs, and we do have those scattered showers ahead. This is not widespread rain. Not everyone will receive them, but we could still see pockets of heavy downpours. Upper 80s, low 90s as we're looking at the foothills across the Charlotte metro area, mainly into the low to mid 90s, 92 in Charlotte, Gastonia 92, 90 for Lincolnton today. Rock Hill 92 for your afternoon high, 93 as we're looking at Chester. As far as our heat, how many days in a row actually we've seen those daytime highs rise above 90 degrees. We're now at 23 consecutive days in a row, and this will be coming to an end before you know it. Look at this weekend's forecast. Can you believe that? Look at 79 degrees for our daytime high on Saturday, low 80s on Sunday, small rain chances, more cloud coverage. Still 3 more days where those daytime highs will rise into the 90s. Again, we should be at 90 degrees. That's our actual average for this time of the year. And then what a drop in those temperatures by Saturday. And it's because we have a strong cold front on the way. It's not just our daytime high, but even our overnight lows. Those early mornings are going to feel incredible, with mid-60s ahead. Precipitation chances, they will increase Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Remember, Friday is going to be our next weather alert day, and it's because we're concerned that we could see some flooding. Now today, there has actually been some changes. That area shaded in yellow here, that's where we could see pockets of heavy rain this afternoon and this evening with some of those storms. Low rain chances for Thursday, and then Friday, that's going to be the day where we're really watching for those pop-up storms that could provide some flooding. Here's 6 o'clock tonight if you have any plans. Scattered showers and storms. Nothing we're not used to. Thursday starts out quiet. We'll do it all over again for our Thursday. But Friday, it's going to be a beautiful start to the morning, but by Friday afternoon and evening, after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we could see these storms train over the same place over and over again, which means we could get rain in the same place over and over again. So if you live in a flood-prone area, you know how it goes. We could see that rapid rise in rivers, streams, creeks. There's a last look at that 7-day forecast. Low 90s, 3 days in a row. Stay close to our WCNC weather team Friday night as we will be weather alert.
All right, so that's a look at the forecast. Okay, let's shift gears. So we mentioned this yesterday, and I believe we ran this interview this morning, but I think it's important to rerun it because school year is almost here. South Carolina is going to be here sooner than here. Next week is
wild.
Insane. Insane in a good way, I should say.
Yes.
But it is tax-free weekend this weekend, I should add. So I know there's going to be a lot of parents, a lot of caregivers, teachers out trying to take advantage of those deals. So we had an interview this morning, and I paused because I thought we had a little bit of breaking news, but we don't. But this is what happens here on Live Impact News. So I'll get back to the topic at hand. So we have an interview with Clover Superintendent Dr. Sheila Quinn. This is her 8th year on the job. Our very own Lisa Washington spoke with her. They talked about teacher recruitment and retention, growth in the district, AI, artificial intelligence, parent involvement, and her message to students. Here's that full interview with Dr. Sheila Quinn.
This is year 8 as superintendent, and it's been a great ride.
That's the first thing I have on here. This is your 8th year superintendent. What is that like? Does it seem like it's been 8 years? Because you were in education, you worked for the state for a while. Being superintendent, 8 years, you're, I guess, settled in now?
I feel settled in, but we like to say that the COVID years were like dog years, so I'm really kind of considering this year 18 for those 2 years of COVID were tough. But no, this is home now. My children graduated high school here, and even when I worked for the State Department, I lived here. So this is where I always wanted to be, and I'm just so glad to be serving 8 years in.
What are you looking forward to this year? I know you have a lot of things going on in the district, the growth, the new schools coming next year. What are you looking forward to with the start of this school year?
Well, a couple of things. Our theme at Convocation all of that will happen as this year rolls through. We will draw attendance lines and we will staff those schools. So as we're trying to say 100% together, we'll also be doing some dividing. And so our theme was really special this year to try to remind us our community will respond if we handle this well, and we've got to be together.
One school is a lot.
Yeah.
You're talking about 3 at one time.
We were able, over the course of several years, to put money in a building campaign that is funding a lot of the furniture, the fixtures, the equipment. So about $17 million of that, of the new school funding, our district saved over time. So that's going to help. But just when you double in utility bills and you double sports programs, all of those things will be things that we have to bring in the next year's budget. So the next year's budget's going to be an interesting opportunity for us to figure out how much we can really do to keep costs down, but also fund these new schools.
Got to keep the lights on.
You got to keep the lights on.
And the AC when it's hot.
And you're probably going to have to hire a few more teachers. So.
For sure. And it's not unique to your district, really to the area, but this is being done in response to the growth.
We've had tremendous growth, probably 250 to 300 kids per year for the last 7 or 8 years. Then we had a little bit of a lull this past year as our developments were built out, but we've got 3,000 more homes coming in the next 3 years. So we're going to see another uptick, we believe.
And I know that one of the things you've been focused on, I was reading this morning actually as superintendent, is keeping kids engaged. And you said, particularly with the high school kids, like if I can get them through 9th grade, I can get them to graduation. Tell me about your focus and why you put so much importance on that.
Yeah, so the state has a metric called On Track to Graduation, and it's something we've been working on here in Clover before it was a part of our accountability. But I'm really proud to say that we had 96% of our 9th graders who earned their English and their math and 4 other credits, so they're on track after 9th grade, and we had 96.1% of our 10th graders who had 12 credits at the end of that year, including their English and math for that 2nd year of high school. So when you are able to maintain kids on track, you can do things like hit a 95, 96% graduation rate, which of course is not only important for us as an accountability to our parents that we're doing the right thing, but it's great for our kids.
Wonderful. What are the biggest lessons that you've learned being on the job 8 years?
Gosh, that's a hard question because you learn all the time. I think that the biggest thing that I've learned is it's about your people. You know, you can talk about strategies and systems, and all those are important. We call them the metrics we're moving. Those are all important, but it comes down to day in and day out. Do people trust you? And when I say people, I'm talking about our staff, but I'm also talking about our community and our parents. Do they have trust that we're delivering on what we say we are going to deliver, that kids are going to be successful, productive, and responsible, and they're going to have opportunities when they leave us? So when you rely on your people and you take care of your people, they can then deliver for the students.
Let's talk about taking care of your people, because Clover did what hadn't been done in the county with the starting salary of $50,000 for teachers. That speaks volumes. I know it's not a one-person effort, but also with retaining teachers, with recruiting teachers, when they see that $50,000, I mean, that's some money.
That is, and it's certainly something we'd like to continue to grow on. We have an initiative called Destination District. We want to be a place where people want to come, and so from a recruitment standpoint, but more importantly, they want to stay. So that move was a part of our Destination District initiative. We also did pay raises for all of the other job categories as well. So everybody got a little bit. We did focus more heavily on our teachers that year, and it's something that our board would like to continue to do over time. The other big part of that was, so that's on the front end to start it at 50. We also began to add steps on the top. 30 and 32 steps, because we're not going to recruit enough teachers to get out of the teacher shortage. They're just not coming out of college fast enough. We're going to have to keep our veteran teachers. So it really is both of those two things.
How does this school year look as far as like staffing positions with teachers, other staff?
We are almost completely staffed, knock on wood, because we have had some late retirements here in the summer, or late moves. A lot of teachers will move, get relocated. Their husbands or wives will get relocated. But we're almost fully staffed. We have a couple of special ed positions that we're still sometimes recruit out of Charlotte when teachers retire and want to come and still work. So that's a solution for us to be on the border. And we get a lot of from Winthrop and a lot of the in-state colleges that teachers want to move up and be around Charlotte. So we tend to be a district they look at.
Is that the biggest challenge? Was it, recruiting teachers? Like, what are some of the biggest challenges?
We've done pretty well on the recruitment side. I can honestly tell you that the retention side is really where we need to focus now, because again, teachers have options. They move, they get married, they have their own families, and so we really have to work hard to keep the incentives in place that will keep them. So for example, our teachers can bring their children here to work, to school here, so that when they come to work, their children can come to work. We have the largest 4K program in the area, so we have over 320 full-day 4K children.
Wow.
So every school has 2 to 4 pre-K classes, and that's a benefit when your children can start in pre-K. We really, really work hard. We hire more teacher assistants than any district around us, which there's secret sauce in that. When you have support and help as a teacher, you're not alone in the classroom, that's an incentive to keep working here. So those are some of the things we're trying to do to make sure we can retain our staff.
That's very important. And as you said, I mean, having teachers who the kids and the parents know, who live in the community, who are from the area, that helps. But as you said, keeping those teachers long term, it's a win-win for everybody, it seems.
That's correct.
Are there any changes that parents or students can expect for this school year? Anything that the district is doing different that they haven't done before?
No major changes. I think the biggest change we're going to have is the attendance lines that will start in August.
Okay.
So that's been the top of everyone's mind. When are you going to let us know what schools our neighborhoods are going to be zoned for? And our board has a pretty aggressive timeline for that. So we will begin to explain those lines to our community at the end of August. We will spend the entire month of September in focus groups and community meetings to talk about those lines, and the board would like to approve them by the September board meeting. So it's going to be a lot, and it's going to happen pretty quickly. Some of the lines are going to make perfect sense, but you're always going to have people that say, no, I want this instead of that. So.
And so when you say lines, just to clarify, you mean like the boundaries with the new schools of where the zoning will be determine which school one will attend.
Yes, and it's so interesting because when you have 8 elementary schools, you would think that's really just going to be a certain part of your community, but almost every school's zone is going to be touched. There may be minor touches in some, but almost every school zone is going to change in some way. And certainly when you have one high school, when everybody's gone to one, then we're going to split that. So that line is the line people are really asking questions about.
That's going to be an interesting one. I can't wait to talk to you about that next year. That'll be a little different.
It's going to be all right.
All right, so that is Lisa Washington's full interview with Clover's superintendent ahead of the school year. They're talking about that preparation into the school year as we're just a week away from school starting, about a week away from school starting. So you can catch that full interview on our website and on our YouTube page. Let's come back out here. We want to send it to you now. President Donald Trump speaking or signing into law, rather, and also speaking about the VA home loan program.
Fully offset and will add nothing at all to debt is common sense legislation at overwhelming support and passed unanimously in the House and the Senate. Wow, when was the last time that happened? That's pretty impressive. My administration is committed to doing everything possible to ensure that our veterans are treated with respect and treated as well as anybody in this country. They're so important. They're so great. They've suffered so much, in many cases. In May, I signed an executive order to open the National Center for Warrior Independence in Los Angeles, California, which will house up to 6,000 homeless veterans. You know, until we came along, they treated the veterans far worse than the illegal immigrants. They came in, they were staying in hotels, luxury hotels, and the veterans are staying outside on the sidewalk on the same hotel. Some pictures are just incredible. In addition, we'll also be opening a full-service VA center in New Hampshire, which is the only state in the union to not have a VA center. And I made that promise to the people of New Hampshire a long while ago, and we got it done. It's the only state that doesn't have, and yet you have a lot of veterans in New Hampshire. We're slashing the wait times at VA medical centers, and we're bringing back VA choice and VA accountability, which I had and the Democrats abandoned. It made it so much better. Accountability, meaning if you treat our veterans badly, we treat you badly. You get fired and beyond that. And VA choice is you can get out and you can, if you don't have a doctor ready, willing, and able to take care of you within the VA, you go outside, you go see a doctor, you get better, and we pay the bill. And the veterans loved it. We had a 92% approval rating. And what did the Democrats do? They came along and they ended both of them, and they hired back many of the people that we fired. We fired people and replaced them with great, loving people. But we fired people who were sadists. In many cases, they were sick. They were thieves, they were stealing, and they hired them back. The accountability, meaning the VA accountability, it was a big deal getting it passed because you have unions, you have all sorts of problems to go through. We got it through everything. And the Democrats, as soon as they got back, they hired many of the worst people right back, and we're getting rid of them. But I want to thank the two gentlemen standing behind me, and I'd like to ask you just to say a couple of words, and then we'll take a few questions if you'd like. And we'll sign the bill, and our veterans will be very happy about it. Thank you. Mike, do you want to start?
Well, first off, thank you, Mr. President, for signing this bill today. Let me tell you that not only this bill, which will help make sure that those veterans have got themselves in a situation where maybe they would be foreclosed on, it gives them just a little bit extra help without the government going into a banking business like what we had with the previous administration. I also want to say thank you, too, though, for appointing Doug Collins as our secretary for the VA. As chairman of the VA, having the opportunity to work with Doug, one, because we worked together before, but he has the right attitude, and the attitude is the VA is not about bureaucracy. It's about the veterans, and we want to keep it that way. That doesn't mean we don't have a good workforce. What it means is that workforce is focused on the veterans, not on making sure that the VA grows, but making sure that the VA does the job it's supposed to do. And thank you, Mr. President, it's your leadership that allows that to happen. Thank you, everybody, for coming here today. Thank you, Mr. President, for hosting us here. I'm the longest-serving enlisted member of the United States military to ever get elected to Congress in the history of our nation. And I'm unequivocally stating right now that President Donald J. Trump is the most positive, pro-veteran president in the history of this country. And so he backs up his words with deeds, and this is another example of how President Trump is taking care of our veterans. So, sir, I'm very thankful for you, for your leadership, and let's get this thing done and get our veterans into homes. So God bless you, and God bless the United States.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Let's sign first, and we'll take a couple of questions. Yes. We'll get it done. We've been waiting a long time. And I do want to commend Doug Collins, because I hear he's doing a fantastic job. He's done an incredible job. Okay. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
No auto pen? That's a very important bill, and we want to thank everybody for the great help, but in particular, you two guys have done a fantastic job. Thank you very much. Okay, take a pen. Oh, I'll keep that one. Take a pen. Thank you, sir. Take another pen. And we'll take them and give them to the other people that helped, okay? Very well. Okay, questions?
Mr. President, you said that higher interest rates are making it harder for veterans to refinance. In a stronger than expected GDP report this morning, what do you say to analysts who worry that lowering interest rates would actually lead to inflation?
Well, if that happens, then we just raise them. What you do is you lower them, and let's see if there's inflation. Right now, there's no inflation. Everybody thought there would be. All we have is billions of dollars of cash pouring into our country from other countries that took advantage of us for many, many years. You know, they were taken advantage of. We were like the stupid people that didn't know what they were doing. They took advantage of us. Other countries, friend and foe. And by the way, the friend was oftentimes much worse than the foe when it comes to trade. So if that happens, what you do is you raise your rates and you do what you have to do to stop inflation. But we're keeping the rates high, and it's hurting people from buying houses, and we don't want that. If for any reason that happened in a year or two, if there's some signs of inflation coming back, right now there's not. We have a great thing going. I think we're going to have the richest economy you've ever seen. We have money coming in that we've never even thought about at numbers that nobody's ever seen before. We have a deal with Japan where they're going to pay us $550 billion. We have a deal with Europe where they're doing $750 billion plus $400 billion plus $300 billion. And many other countries, it's likewise, you know, relatively, those are two big ones, but likewise. So we have a lot of money coming in, and we have no inflation, and we're very strong, and we should be lowering the rates. You know, each point that this gentleman keeps up costs us $365 billion a year. Think of that. 1 point, $365 billion. If you bring it down a point, we save 365. We should be the lowest interest rate, and we're not. We're 38, number 38, because of the Fed. It's all because of the Fed. He's done a bad job. Now, he's got a meeting today, but I call him too late. You know, he's always too late. Even if he does it today, probably won't. I hear they're going to do it in September, not today. For what reason? Nobody knows, but Europe, as you know, cut their rates 11 times in the last short period of time. But the good news is we're doing better than anybody anywhere in the world. Nobody's doing anything even close to us, even with the higher rates. The higher rates do affect housing, though, because people can't go out and get a loan or refinance their house. And it would be nice to have them be able to do that. That would be just another check of a box. That would be very important. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, you mentioned today that India, in addition to its 25% tariff rate, would pay an additional penalty because of its support of Russia. What is that additional penalty? And are other countries facing the same threat?
Well, we're negotiating right now, and it's also BRICS. You know, they have BRICS, which is basically a group of countries that are anti the United States, and India is a member of that, if you can believe it. It's an attack on the dollar, and we're not going to let anybody attack the dollar. So it's partially BRICS, and it's partially It's partially the trade situation. It's the deficit. We had a tremendous deficit. So, as you know, Prime Minister Modi is a friend of mine.
All right, welcome back. Thank you for staying with us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We're approaching the bottom of the hour. It has been a busy afternoon. A lot happening. Really cool live interview that we did earlier today.
We did.
It's with CeeLo Green. He's performing here.
CeeLo Green.
The CeeLo Green performing here the 8th. So yes, we have a lot going on, and including right now live is a press conference following that tragic shooting there in Midtown in New York City. So this happened a couple of days ago, that shooting there where the gunman walked into that building there and then eventually shot himself. So holding this press conference is Zohran Mamdani. He is the Democratic nominee for mayor in New York City. Again, he's having a press conference a couple of days following that shooting. Let's take a listen into what's being said right now.
My friends, to open up the Bangladeshi American Police Association. And our goal was threefold. One is to increase number of Bangladeshis to NYPD. Second was to help them go up the ranks. And the third is to bridge between the Bangladeshi American community and the police department. But since then, the Bangladeshi community has grown in the NYPD. More families have encouraged their sons and daughters to join. And they have felt pride watching their children to serve New York City as a police officer. But today, that pride is somewhat overwhelmed by pain. This brutal loss has shaken us to the core. It is just not a tragedy for the police officers, Islam's wife, his children, and his family, but it is a tragedy for all of us, for all fellow officers, for all our community. We'll never forget Officer Islam's bravery, his service, and his sacrifice. His memory will live on in our hearts and in our community and NYPD. May Allah grant him highest place in Jannah, and will all carry forward his legacy, his honor, and with unity and with love. Thank you very much.
And so first I would just say, Zohran, thank you again for coming to meet with us, meet with Mr. Etienne's family today, and with that I will turn it over to you. I want to thank Manny and 32PJ for having us here today and for allowing me the opportunity to convey my heartfelt condolences to Alan's family, who we heard from just earlier. I want to thank retired Lieutenant Shamsul Haq, who co-founded the Bangladeshi American Police Association, of which Officer Islam was a member. I landed back in New York City this morning and went directly to the home of Officer Islam, where I met with members of his family, young and old, who are heartbroken over the loss of their son, of their brother, their father, their husband, their friend, heartbroken in a way that words cannot fully describe. And as we spent close to an hour together, there were moments that stayed with me. Moments like when Officer Islam's sisters asked me Who will we call Bhaiya now? Moments, brother-in-law told me of how it was Officer Islam that brought him to this country, that took him to get his first learner's permit, that got him his first job working at a restaurant in Union Square, where they would speak together every single day. And when he told me that for him, Officer Islam was an open door, and now that door would be forever closed. And I know that in the way in which that home is shattered, the way in which it is quieter and emptier than ever before, there are other homes across this city experiencing that same kind of loss. Other homes where families are asking themselves questions for which there are no answers. And while we grieve the loss and the murder of 4 New Yorkers, we know that there are others recuperating now in hospital, and that millions of New Yorkers are praying for them all. And while I will not say the name of the gunman, I want to talk about those that we lost. We've heard from Alan's family of a man who was the father of 2 children. We've read of how his smile lit up every room, how it was as warm as it was infectious, and of a man who did a job that is so often overlooked, and yet it is that first greeting that so many feel when they come home. And so it was him that was also in that first line of fire just a few days ago. We've heard of Officer Islam, a police officer who leaves behind 2 young children, a pregnant wife due to give birth just in the next month, 2 aging parents, one of whom is struggling in his own health. And we know also of Wesley LePatner, who was a New Yorker that shone brightly across this city, who served on the boards of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the UJA Federation, the Heschel School, who served on the board of the Yale University Library Council, who is remembered by friends and by colleagues for the incredible achievements she leaves behind, and for the 2 children and husband that mourn her today, as do all New Yorkers. And also of Julia Hyman, a 27-year-old New Yorker who grew up here, who attended Riverdale High School, captained 3 different teams in her senior year, attended Cornell University, for which she just went to a 5-year reunion, and was remembered by colleagues at her workplace today as a superstar. A life cut short by a senseless act of violence. And as New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and Americans across the country mourn this mass shooting, we are reminded that no matter how strong our gun laws are in this state, we are only as safe as the weakest laws in this nation. And so in this moment, the onus is on all of us to follow the words of Alan's brother, and to put forward a vision of stronger gun laws. And I echo the call from Governor Hochul for a nationwide ban on assault rifles, as it is horrifying to each and every one of us in this room and beyond that a man with such documented mental health struggles was able to purchase a weapon, leave alone a weapon of such devastating capability. And we know that the consequences of national inaction, though we feel them this week in Midtown, we know that they join a list of so many other places across this country. Be they Uvalde, be they El Paso, be they Sandy Hook, be they Charleston. As mayor, I will lead calls to ensure that we pass the legislation necessary beyond New York, such that every New Yorker can rest assured that we need not prepare for the next iteration of this horrific mass shooting. And we know that mass shootings are sadly all too familiar for New Yorkers themselves, as we experience them whether on our street corners or even on public transit. And though we have made strides towards making this city one that is free of that gun violence, we know that there is so much work to be done. And in this moment of mourning and of grief, I want to thank law enforcement for their response to the horrific shooting on Monday and their work in keeping New Yorkers safe. I ask that in this moment, we come together as New Yorkers and we remember the 4 of our neighbors that were killed. We honor their memories and we live up to the way in which they led their lives. Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, I know you just talked about the fact that you wanted to honor the people who responded Monday. And the reason I'm asking this question is I wonder if your views about the NYPD have changed over time, especially in light of this shooting, and the fact that both Cuomo and Mayor Adams have criticized your past statements about the SRG, the Strategic Response Group, which did respond because they claim that you said it should be disbanded. Do you still believe that? And do you want to...
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Serderant. We are a couple of minutes past the bottom of the hour. That is mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani holding a press conference speaking after that tragic shooting in Midtown, New York City, just a couple of days ago. He's speaking out, again, regarding that deadly shooting there in New York City. Let's come back out now. We want to get now to another big story at this hour. Happening live. Fed Chair Jerome Powell is speaking now. The news just coming down about the Federal Reserve leaving interest rates unchanged, even as President Trump demands cuts to interest rates. Again, interest rates remain unchanged. Let's listen to Fed Chair Jerome Powell as he is just got on stage just moments ago.
Our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. At today's meeting, the committee decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 4.25% to 4.5%, and to continue reducing the size of our balance sheet. We will continue to determine the appropriate stance of monetary policy based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. Changes to government policies continue to evolve, and their effects on the economy remain uncertain. Higher tariffs have begun to show through more clearly to prices of some goods, but their overall effects on economic activity and inflation remain to be seen. A reasonable base case is that the effects on inflation could be short-lived, reflecting a one-time shift in the price level. But it is also possible that the inflationary effects could instead be more persistent, and that is a risk to be assessed and managed. Our obligation is to keep longer-term inflation expectations well anchored and to prevent a one-time increase in the price level from becoming an ongoing inflation problem. For the time being, we're well positioned to learn more about the likely course of the economy and the evolving balance of risks before adjusting our policy stance. We see our current policy stance as appropriate to guard against inflation risks. We're also attentive to risks on the employment side of our mandate. In coming months, we will receive a good amount of data that will help inform our assessment of the balance of risks and the appropriate setting of the federal funds rate. At this meeting, the committee continued its discussions as part of our 5-year review of our monetary policy framework. We focused on potential revisions to our statement on longer-run goals and monetary policy strategy, and are on track to wrap up any modifications by late summer. The Fed has been assigned 2 goals for monetary policy: maximum employment and stable prices. We remain committed to supporting maximum employment, bringing inflation sustainably to our 2% goal, and keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Chair Powell. There's a lot of lean in the markets, and not to mention out of the administration for a rate cut now in September. Is that expectation unrealistic at this point?
So, as you know, today
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Surden. Right there is Fed Chair Jerome Powell. He is speaking regarding interest rates. We got a report that interest rates will remain unchanged despite President Trump pushing back on that notion. Again, Fed Chair Jerome Powell speaking in Washington, D.C. regarding that. That is happening live in Washington, D.C. We want to step away from that, but if that is still up, we will take you back there as soon as we can. We want to come back closer here to home. We want to talk about a new law that will enable North Carolina cities to install speed cameras in school zones. Now, this legislation aims to crack down on speeding in school zones statewide. WCNC Charlotte's Anna King is out there in the rain. She has her umbrella handy. Anna, what can you tell about this? What can you tell us about this legislation, and what does this mean for parents? Walk us through this.
Well, this falls under Senate Bill 391, and this change will be enacted in October, so in the fall here. And if you take a look behind me, and I can kind of paint the picture for you, there would be a camera here at the school zone. There will be a camera here at the school zone speed limit sign, and as people go through here flying, the camera will capture their license plate, and then they will get a ticket in the mail, and that fine is about $250. Now, I spoke with a parent earlier today whose child goes to school here in Mecklenburg County, and she says this is an issue she sees all the time. She says this change, in addition to other changes like lower speed limits and speed bumps, could also help this problem out, but she says this is a really, really big problem, so she's happy to see this happen.
All right, that is Anna King live there. Again, that new law at school is set to go back. Anna's in the rain, so I'll let you go. I don't have any questions for you, Anna. You can catch Anna later on in our newscast there. Again, this is a big deal. Again, school, we just heard from the superintendent there in Clover. We heard from the superintendent the other day in Rock Hill. School is about to be back, and a lot of parents speeding in school zones is a big concern. So again, this is a story that we are following, and we will have more updates throughout our evening newscast. We want to get back now out to Jerome Powell, Fed Chair Jerome Powell, who is speaking regarding interest rates. It looks like that shot, is it frozen? It looks like the shot is frozen. Okay, can't tell if I'll come back out. Let me read a little bit about what we have so far. Again, the Federal Reserve, as we get this shot back up, the Federal Reserve left its key short-term interest rate unchanged for the 5th time this year, brushing off repeated calls from President Donald Trump for a cut. Now, it looks like we got this shot back up and working. Let's take a listen in.
Waiting for the economic effects to show themselves.
No, I think we're still, you're right. It's been a very dynamic time for these trade negotiations, and lots and lots of events in the intermeeting period, but we're still, a ways away from seeing where things settle down. We are clearly getting more and more information, and I think at this point, people's estimates, our estimates, outside estimates of the likely, effective level of tariffs is not moving around that much at this point. But at the same time, there are many uncertainties left to resolve. So yes, we are learning more and more. It doesn't feel like we're very close to the end of that process, and that's not for us to judge, but it feels like there's much more to come, as well, looking ahead.
Neil.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Neil Irwin with Axios. This morning we got a GDP report in which final domestic private purchases decelerated, slowest pace since 22. There was a weakness in the interest-sensitive sectors and residential investment, commercial structures. Are those not signs that monetary policy is a little too restrictive right now, given current economic conditions?
So the GDP and PDFP numbers came in pretty much right where we expected them to come in. You got to look at the whole picture. So certainly, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, economic activity data, GDP, private domestic final purchases, which we think is a narrower but better signal for future, for where the economy is going, has come down to a little better than 1%, 1.2%, I think, in the case of GDP for the first half, whereas it was 2.5% last year. So that has certainly come down. But if you look at the labor market, what you see is, by many, many statistics, the labor market is kind of still in balance. It's things like quits, job openings, and let alone the unemployment rate. They're all by many measures, very similar to where they were a year ago. So you do not see weakening in the labor market. You do see a slowing in job creation, but also a slowing in the supply of workers. So you've got a labor market that's in balance, albeit partially because both demand and supply for workers is coming down at the same pace, and that's why the unemployment rate has remained roughly stable, which is why I said we do see downside risk in the labor market. I mean, our two mandate variables, right, are inflation and maximum employment, stable prices and maximum employment, not so much growth. So the labor market looks solid. Inflation is above target, and even if you look through the tariff effects, we think it's still a bit above target, and that's why our stance is where it is. But as I mentioned, downside risks to the labor market are certainly apparent.
So on labor, given the fluid labor supply situation, is there a number for this jobs report we get on Friday that would look to you like equilibrium job growth?
The main number you have to look at now is the unemployment rate, because it's true that the demand for workers in the form of, let's call it, just say payroll jobs, that number has come down, but so has the break-even number, kind of in tandem. So, as long as that puts the labor market in balance, the fact that it's getting into balance due to declines in both supply and demand, though, I think it is suggestive of downside risk. So we of course will be watching that carefully.
Thank you. Colby Smith with the New York Times. Two of your colleagues called for a quarter-point cut today, and I'm wondering what aspects of their argument were most compelling to you and how you're weighing their views against those on the committee who, as of the June forecast, were in the camp of the Fed holding interest rates steady for the remainder of the year. And just in terms of the June SEP in particular, is that still the best representation of where the core of the committee is?
So on the dissents, what you want from everybody and also from a dissenter is a clear explanation of what your thinking is and what are the arguments you're making, and we had that today. So I think basically this was quite a good meeting all around the table where people were thought carefully about this and put their positions out there. As I mentioned, the sort of the majority of the committee was of the view that inflation's a bit above target, maximum employment is at target. That calls for modestly restrictive, in my way of thinking, modestly restrictive stance of policy for now. But we had two dissenters who I think, you want that clear thinking and expression of your thinking, and we certainly had that today, I think all around the table. In terms of, you asked about the June SEP, I wouldn't, that you're right, that's what it says, and that may well, I couldn't point to it 6 weeks later as expressing people's thought. You really can't do that. We don't run an SEP, and I don't like to substitute in my own estimate of what the SEP might be. We don't have one. So I'll just say that, we haven't made any decisions about September. We'll be monitoring all the incoming data and asking ourselves whether the federal funds rate is in the right place.
And just on the point about policy being only modestly restrictive, does that mean that there's actually not much scope to reduce rates once the conditions for a cut are met, barring a significant weakening of the labor market?
So let me say, my own estimate is modestly restrictive, and there are a range of views of what the neutral rate is at this moment for our economy, and so others may say it's more restrictive or less restrictive even. We're going to be at some point, when we return to moving toward a more neutral stance, we'll be making that judgment as we go. I don't think we have a preset course. It's not so mechanical as saying, we've derived with great confidence the neutral rate and that is our destination, because really we understand that no one actually knows what the neutral rate is. We know it by its works, and that will be the way the economy reacts over time to, slightly looser policy.
Nick Timmeros, The Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, My question is about what have you learned over the last few months about the inflation generating and price pass-through process? And just to drill down, the June CPI report showed evidence of tariff-induced goods inflation. Now, the tariff landscape is only starting to be settled with some of these more recent deals. Given the lags between when tariffs are announced and when they show up in goods prices, is 2 months a long enough horizon to evaluate the impact and be confident that tariffs aren't impacting the broader inflation process?
I think you have to think of this as still quite early days. And so I think what we're seeing now is substantial amounts of tariff revenue being collected on the order of $30 billion a month, which is, substantially higher than before. And the evidence seems to be mostly not paid only to a small extent through exporters lowering their price, and companies or retailers, sort of people who are upstream, institutions that are upstream from the consumer, are paying most of this for now. Consumers it's starting to show up in consumer prices, as you know, in the June report. We expect to see more of that. And we know from surveys that companies feel that they have every intention of putting this through to the consumer, but the truth is they may not be able to in many cases. So I think we're just going to have to watch and learn empirically how much of this and over what period of time. I think we've learned that the process will probably be slower than expected at the beginning, but we never expected it to be fast. We think we have a long way to go to really understand exactly how it will be. So that's how we're thinking of it right now.
So if I could follow up, is the reticence to look through core goods inflation being driven by the judgment that during the pandemic expectations proved more adaptive than anyone at the Fed expected? Is it being driven by uncertainty over how restrictive policy is?
You could argue we are a bit looking through goods inflation by not raising rates. We haven't reacted to new inflation, but I mean I wouldn't insist upon that. But I think the base case, as I said, a reasonable base case is that these are one-time price effects. Of course, in the end, there will not be. This will not turn out to be inflation, because we'll make sure that it's not. We will, through our tools, make sure that this does not move from being a one-time price increase to serious inflation. We want to do that efficiently, though, and that means we want to do it. If you move too soon, you wind up maybe not getting inflation all the way fixed, and you have to come back. That's inefficient. If you move too late, you might do unnecessary damage to the labor market. So there won't be, in the end, a big inflationary problem. What we're trying to do is accomplish that in a way that is efficient. But in the end, there should be no doubt that we will do what we need to do to keep inflation under control. Ideally, we do it efficiently.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Television and Radio. The one big bill, leaving aside the adjectives, do you expect it to add stimulus to the economy in 2026, and would that be an argument for remaining on hold or cutting back on the number of rate cuts you would expect for next year?
So, of course, let me just ritual disclaimer that we don't express any judgments or anything like that on fiscal legislation or other legislation for that matter. But I would say when you think that the biggest part of the bill was making permanent existing law on taxes, I don't think we see it as particularly stimulative. There should be some stimulative effect, but it shouldn't be significant over the next couple of years.
And to follow up, what do you, well, I don't want to put this in terms of you and the president, so let me ask it this way. Do you have concerns about the cost to the government of keeping rates elevated for longer in terms of interest rate charges?
Yeah, no, that's, we have a mandate, and that's maximum employment and price stability. And it is, it's not something we do to consider the cost to the government of our rate changes. We have to be able to look at the goal variables Congress has given us, use the tools they've given us to achieve those goals, and that's what we do. We don't consider the fiscal needs of the federal government. No advanced economy central bank does that, and it wouldn't be good for, if we did do that, it would be good neither for our credibility nor for the credibility of U.S. fiscal policy. So it's just not something we take into consideration.
Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Guido with Politico. When it comes to the renovations of the Federal Reserve's headquarters that the administration has been looking into, do you see their interest in that issue as being directly tied to the president's push to get you to lower interest rates?
Not for me to say. I will say we had a nice visit with the president. It was an honor to host him. It's not something that happens very often at the Federal Reserve to have the president come over, let alone to visit a building. But it was a good visit.
Are there any aspects of the project that they've raised that you see as making you reconsider any aspects of the project?
So, this project was hatched and conceived almost a decade ago now, and we went through the very long process of clearing it through historic preservation at the National Capital Planning Commission, and a lot of back and forth there. It was very constructive. We started out to do the work, and we're very well along on that work, and I was quite pleased to have the president say multiple times that what he really wanted to see was us getting this construction completed as soon as possible. That is our focus, and that's what we're going to do.
Andrew.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Andrew Ackerman with the Washington Post. What message do you take from the fact that inflation hit 2.1% last September and has bounced higher since? Why do you think financial conditions are restrictive and a neutral rate's below 4% when inflation has stopped falling for almost a year?
So inflation, when you talk about these 12-month inflation measures, you're always battling residual seasonality. So we'll have, for example, 2 months of high inflation sometimes early in the year, and then inflation turns lower, and a lot of that may just be an artifact. So that's why we look at the 12-month numbers. I think inflation is most of the way back to 2%. There are things like the catch-up inflation. So, for example, all the insurance costs that they're only now going through inflation, but they actually reflect inflationary pressures from 2-3 years ago. So that's got to go through. In addition, now we have 3 or 4 tenths of inflation in core inflation from tariffs. So, and we can't really separate that out. We're not going to have a separate kind of inflation that isn't the tariffs. We're always going to be dealing with all of inflation. But the composition, as I mentioned, has really changed. And if you go back to the last couple of years, it was all about services inflation, which was being very sticky. Now services inflation is coming down nicely. Goods inflation was well behaved before, and now goods inflation is going up. So the story has really changed. That's partially because of tariffs. It's also partially because we had restrictive policy in place, and we've seen that the result of that gradually work its way through the services economy.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to ask is, are you comfortable that BLS can continue performing their mission effectively if they take an 8% reduction in headcount and authorized spending as the administration has proposed?
I'm not going to comment on the administration's proposal. I do think, as I've said, I think that we're getting the data that we need to do our jobs, and I think it's really important that good data helps not just the Fed, it helps the government, but it also helps the private sector. People in the economy, they use this data a lot too. So it's quite important for our economy, and certainly for the Fed's work and other government agencies' work, that we continue to get better at data. That's what we've been doing for 100 years. We've been getting better and better and better. It's very hard to accurately capture in real time the output of a $20+ trillion economy. And the United States has been a leader in that for 100 years, and we really need to continue that, in my view.
Edward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Edward Lawrence from Fox Business. How concerned are you with the data that we're coming in, showing no significant upward trend in inflation over the past 6 months, that the wait-and-see approach for inflation is actually giving companies cover to raise prices?
How concerned am I that say that again?
The wait-and-see approach is giving...
The wait-and-see approach, what do you mean by that?
For cutting rates. You're waiting to see if the tariffs will affect inflation. So it's a wait-and-see approach.
Well, so that, that's where policy's restrictive. When we start cutting, it'll go toward neutral.
Okay. This delay, though, where you're saying there's a one-time price increase for tariffs, which possibly could lead into bigger inflation or more inflation. Is that giving companies cover, though, to raise prices?
Well, what may be giving, it's not our policy stance, what may be giving some companies will certainly be taking advantage of the fact of the tariffs and all of the discussion of how they're going to, companies will raise prices when and as they can. And you saw it famously in the first administration of President Trump during those tariffs. Washing machines were tariffed, but dryers weren't. But what do you know? The price of dryers went up too, just like washing machines. So companies will often just they'll cross the street in a group, if you know what I mean. That'll happen. We don't see a lot of that. I mean, what we see now is basically the very beginnings of whatever the effects turn out to be on goods inflation. And I'll say again, they may be less than people estimate or more than people estimate. They're not going to be zero. Consumers will pay some of this. Businesses will pay some of this. Retailers will pay some of this. But we're just going to have to see it through.
And just to follow, if I could, some additional tariffs have been in place since February, and things really haven't broken yet with the economy. So how do you justify to somebody who's looking for a house, who's facing a 7% mortgage and maybe can't afford those rates? How do you justify that?
Well, so the housing is a special case, right? We don't set mortgage rates at the Fed, right? We set an overnight rate, and the rates that go into mortgages are longer term rates, like Treasury rates. It might be 30-year rates, it might be shorter than that, but it's not the overnight Fed's rate. It's not that we don't have any effect. We do have an effect, but we're not the main effect. There are other things going on in the housing sector, and one of those is just there's kind of a long-term housing shortage that we have. We haven't built enough housing. This is not something the Fed can help with, and that'll be the case even after things normalize. So I think the best thing that we can do for housing is to have 2% inflation and maximum employment, and that's what we can contribute to housing. There are lots of other jobs to do for the private sector and Congress, but that's what we're trying to get to. We've made a lot of progress toward that. We have a very good labor market right now. Inflation, we were very close to 2%. We're seeing some goods inflation move us away, but so far not very far away.
Chris.
Hi, Chair Powell. Thank you. Well, can you give us a little more about what kind of economic data does the Fed need to see before you'll be ready to cut? I mean, do you need inflation back nearly to target? Are there other things in the pricing that you look for? Do you need to see weakening in the job market? What kind of things are you looking for?
I mean, ultimately, it could be any of those things, right? But if you saw that the risks to the two goals were moving into balance, if they were fully in balance, that would imply that you should move toward a more neutral stance of policy. This is the special situation we're in, which is we have two-sided risk to both of our goals. When we paused, inflation was above target and the labor market was pretty good. So that was a time when policy was restrictive when we paused. And to be restrictive is to be supporting a return to our inflation target, right? So as the two targets get back into balance, you would think you'd move in a way closer to neutral, and that the next steps that we take are likely to be in that direction. What will it take? It'll be the totality of the evidence. As I mentioned, there's quite a lot of data coming in, which before the next meeting. Will it be dispositive of that? It's really hard to say. We don't make those decisions right now, so we'll have to see.
Well, I guess just in terms of inflation, though, for example, some people would point to if it remains only in goods and it doesn't bleed over to services, then maybe that's evidence that the tariff effect is going to be a temporary one-time thing. Is that kind of thing affect your thinking, or do you just need to see the number come down closer to 2?
We'll look at
All right, we're going to pull away from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, who is speaking now, keeping interest rates where they're at. I know the president has been very vocal about those rates coming down, but obviously the decision going against what the president wants. Obviously, the Fed chair believes that this is the best thing for our economy as it stands right now. We know that Zohran Mamdani is speaking right now, the New York State representative. He's actually speaking on the shooting that happened in New York City, in Manhattan, just 2 days ago. So we'll go to this as this is happening live right now.
As was said by Henry earlier, running as a candidate who is not fixed in time, one that learns and one that leads. And part of that means admitting, as I have grown, and part of that also means focusing on the people who deserve to be spoken about. Because our politics too often creates incentives to spend moments of mourning discussing other candidates, when in fact, many of these victims have not even been buried yet. We are speaking of families who are organizing funerals. And these families' focus is solely on those that they have lost. And we have seen that what they deserve is a moment of empathy, of support, of honor. And what they deserve in the future is one of leadership that seeks to embody those things while ensuring that our focus is on delivering that public safety. And that is who I will be as the next speaker.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you come back?
Now the orderly exit.
All right, this wraps pretty quickly. We'll get back to this if anything happens back here in New York, as Representative Mamdani was just speaking and obviously drawing a lot of attention, being the biggest New York mayor candidate spoken about at this time. We'll go back to Jerome Powell, who's still speaking in front of reporters right now at the Federal Reserve.
Are you concerned the way that conduct might impact the Fed's independence going forward?
I'll just say that, I think that having an independent central bank has been an institutional arrangement that has served the public well. And as long as it serves the public well, it should continue and be respected. If it didn't serve the public well, then it wouldn't be something that we should just automatically defend. But what it gives us, and other central banks, what it gives you is the ability to make these very challenging decisions that in ways that are focused on the data and the evolving outlook, the balance of risks, and all the things we talk about, and not political factors. And so governments all over the advanced economy world have chosen to put a little bit of distance between direct political control of those decisions and the decision makers. So if you were not to have that, there would be a great temptation, of course, to use interest rates to affect elections, for example. And that's something that we don't want to do. So I think that's pretty widely understood. Certainly it is in Congress. And I think it's very important. I'll just say that.
Maria Eloisa.
Afternoon, Chair Powell. Maria Luisa Capurro from Bloomberg News. You mentioned a slowdown in consumer spending, and I wanted to see if you could walk us through what was the discussion with the committee around that. We've seen delinquency rates rising for upper-income households. How do you see that evolving in the next few months, and how much of a vulnerability that is for the economy going forward?
Consumer spending had been very, very strong for the last couple of years, and had repeatedly, forecasters, not just us, had been forecasting it would slow down, and now maybe it finally has. So I would say, if you talk to credit card companies, for example, they will tell you that the consumer's in solid shape and that spending is at a healthy level. It's not growing rapidly, but it's at a healthy level. And delinquencies are not a problem. You mentioned high-end delinquencies. I don't know what to make of that. I read the same thing, but so generally, and if you look at the banks, and when the banks talk about in their earnings calls, the performance of credit has been good. So essentially, you have a consumer that's in good shape and is spending, not at a rapid rate, but it's true, and it was again right in line with what we expected. The GDP data that we got this week. And I think it's still a little bit difficult to interpret because you have these massive swings in net exports, which may also be affecting, some of that can affect consumer spending as well. Look, it's one of the data points that we pay most careful attention to, and there's no question that it's slowed. And we're watching it closely, but we also watch the labor market and the performance of inflation. Those are our two variables that we're assigned to maximize.
And just to follow up on what my colleagues were asking about this sense, Governor Waller said that the labor market is on edge, and he was pointing to weaknesses on the private sector. I was wondering, you've said that the main number to look at is the unemployment number overall, but what was the discussion about the state of the private jobs market?
So I'm not going to talk about any individual's, any individual's comments. I wouldn't do that. But look, I think what we know is that private sector job creation, certainly in the last report we'll see on Friday, but had come down a bit. And if you take the QCEW adjustment seriously, it may be even lower, maybe close to zero. But the unemployment rate was still low. So what that's telling you is that demand for workers is slowing, but so is the supply. So it's in balance. Oddly enough, you've got a very low unemployment rate, and it's kind of been there for a year as job creation has moved down. But also we know that because of immigration policy, really, the flow into our labor force is just a great deal slower, and those two things have slowed more or less in tandem. If you look at things like I mentioned, quits. Look at wages. Wages are gradually cooling. Look at vacancies to unemployment. Those things have been pretty stable they haven't really moved a lot in a full year. So I think if you take the totality of the labor market data, you've got a solid labor market. But I think you have to see that there are downside risks. You don't see weakening in the labor market, but I think you've got downside risks in a world where unemployment's being held down because both demand and supply are declining. I think it's worth paying close attention to it, and we are.
Nancy.
Hi, Chair Powell. Nancy Marshall-Genzer with Marketplace. One more question on the lack of unanimity in today's decision, the two dissents. Was there talk during the meeting? I know you're not going to talk about exactly what individuals said, but in general, was there talk during the meeting of cutting rates, and what was the case against that at the meeting?
Sure. So we have an economic go-around where people talk about the economy, and then that's yesterday, and then today we have a monetary policy go-around all the way around the table. Everyone gives their views. So the discussion around policy was the majority view was still what it has been, which is that inflation's running above target, maximum employment is right at target. That means policy should be a little bit restrictive, somewhat restrictive, because we want inflation to move all the way back to its target. So that's where people have been and still are. Two of our members felt that the time had come to cut, and that they, for the reasons that they're going to express. I won't tell you the reasons. They'll issue some kind of a thing in the next day or so. But that's the story, and I would say well argued, very thoughtfully argued all around the table, good arguments, and it's a situation where an unusual situation. The economy is in good shape, but it's an unusual situation where you have risks to both your employment mandate and your inflation mandate. That's the nature of a supply shock, and it's probably not surprising that there would be differences and different perspectives on that, as well as different views of where the neutral rate is, so that different views of how tight policy is. So we have those. I will say what you hope is that people, explain their positions very thoughtfully and clearly, and we absolutely had that today, all the way around the table. I would call it one of the better meetings I can recall from that standpoint.
And you've said you're waiting to be confident inflation is heading toward your 2% target before you start cutting rates. When you do get that confidence, would you be in favor of lowering rates right away?
It's not quite the way I would put it. You know, I said that's why we think policy should be restrictive, is because, you know, inflation is above target. When we have risks to both goals, and one of them is farther away from goal than the other, and that's inflation. Maximum employment's at goal, so you have to. That means policy should be tight, because tight policy is what brings inflation down. If you came to the view that the risks to the two were more in balance, that would imply that policy shouldn't be restrictive. It should be more neutral, more you know, a neutral stance, and that would be somewhat lower than where we are now. No one knows exactly where that is. So that's the framework I think I'd be taking, and you know, we'll just have to see. We're going to be obviously looking at a lot of data in the next cycle. It is one of the cycles where we have 2 employment and 2 inflation reports, and we'll see where that takes us.
Jeff Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking the question. Jeff Cox from CNBC.com. A metric that you like to cite a lot is the final sales to private domestic purchasers. That was down to a 1.2% gain in second quarter from 1.9% in Q1, suggesting that there's some softening in underlying demand. I just wondering if you look at that, you combine that with some of the housing numbers, the weakness that you acknowledged at the top of your remarks, that the housing market is in fact weak, and the inflation numbers from GDP today came down to 2.1% for headline, 2.5% for core. I'm wondering how much more movement you would need to see from these data points before you would be comfortable with cutting in, say, September.
It's going to be the total. Hard to answer that specifically. PDFP, I think, for the first half, private domestic final purchases, or final sales, as people call it, was 1.6 on the first half. GDP, I believe, was 1.2%. That's the whole half. You mentioned the quarters. So those are slower, but you know, GDP is bumpy quarter to quarter, half to half, and often gets revised, you know, after the fact. The labor market data we still think is, continue to think is the best data we have on the economy, and that shows a 4.1% unemployment rate. It shows wages, you know, still at a healthy level, but moving ever closer to what we would regard as long-run sustainable, consistent with longer-run productivity and 2% inflation. So the labor market is actually still quite solid. Inflation is above target, even ignoring tariffs. It's a little bit above target, and tariffs. So we're watching all of that, and again, trying to do the right thing in what is a challenging situation, because you're being pulled in 2 directions, and you have to decide which of those to go in. And actually, at some point, if they're sort of equally at risk, then you really want to be at a neutral policy stance, which we're not right now.
So it would be safe to say that if the data kind of stays in line with where it is right now, that you wouldn't be comfortable with cutting in September?
I'm not going to say that. No, I just think we're going to need to see the data, and it can go in many different directions. The inflation data and the employment data, and we're going to make a judgment based on all of the data and based on that balance of risks analysis that I mentioned.
Thank you.
Greg, Rob, the last question.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Greg Robb from MarketWatch. The Treasury Secretary has said recently that it would be confusing for the markets if you stayed on as a governor after your term as chair ends. And I was wondering if you had any update for us on a decision on that front.
Sorry, I do not have any update for you. Thanks very much, everyone.
All right, a lot of questions by journalists, of course. A lot of people curious about what this means about the relationship between Fed Chair Jerome Powell and President Trump. Obviously, we just saw them about a week and a half ago having some discrepancy over the amount of money that it was going to take, or the funding available for the renovations at the Federal Reserve building. That was obviously captured on camera just last week. So I'm sure there will be potentially some more words being said on either side about what this means for the economy. We do have something going on right now at the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on privacy, technology, and the law. The hearing is titled Protecting the Virtual You, Safeguarding Americans' Online Data, which is actually interesting because, Jeb, I saw by the AP that there's a report, or I guess just an incentive, an initiative by the Trump administration for millions of Americans to upload personal health data to new apps run by private tech companies. So this was just out 2 hours ago. So very interesting that this is happening today, and that report was out. If you do want to look for it, again, it's the Associated Press on the Trump administration pushing a new initiative for millions of Americans to upload their personal health data on new apps run by private tech companies. Let's go to the Senate Judiciary hearing now on Technology Now.
There's confidence that their data will be uniformly protected across America, regardless of where they live or choose to do business. And it would provide the certainty Main Street businesses need to lawfully and responsibly use data to better serve their customers online or across state lines. Establishing a uniform national law that extends consumer privacy rights and consistent privacy rules to all consumers and businesses in America is a core principle for Main Street. I will highlight two more. First, a federal privacy law should protect consumers comprehensively with equivalent standards for all businesses. A privacy law should empower consumers to control their personal data used by businesses, regardless of business type. Likewise, businesses must be permitted to lawfully use data consumers share with them to better serve customer needs. To meet these goals, we recommend a federal privacy law that creates equivalent privacy obligations for all businesses handling consumer data. This would be a change from past federal privacy bills that narrowed obligations for service providers in big tech, telecom, cable, and financial industries, relieving them from the same obligations that apply to Main Street businesses. For privacy laws to succeed for consumers, it is critical for all entities handling consumer data to secure that data and protect privacy rights. This is true regardless of the terms used in privacy laws that blur the reality of who actually controls the data. The label controller, which is applied to every Main Street business that directly serves a customer, can create a false impression about the power of Main Street businesses as they interact with big tech service providers. Main Street companies control their relationship to customers, a responsibility they value, but very few can control how nationwide service providers operate and do business. Powerful big tech and ISP service providers require Main Street businesses to sign take-it-or-leave-it contracts that dictate the terms of their service. The myth that big tech processors merely follow the instructions of the typical Main Street business is not credible. Privacy law should not permit any industry sector to shift its responsibilities onto another. Ensuring equivalent data privacy obligations across industry sectors is also inherently pro-consumer. Consumers have the right to expect privacy rules they can understand, predict, and support that meet their expectations. Congress can pass a law to ensure that all businesses protect consumers' privacy, and processors cannot hide behind labels that make it appear they have no control at all. Finally, a federal privacy law should hold accountable all entities handling personal data with the same enforcement mechanisms. This creates an even playing field with proper incentives across industry. The law should encourage compliance that protects consumers more effectively than gotcha lawsuits that threaten Main Street businesses striving to be in compliance. This is why state privacy laws thoughtfully couple government notice with the opportunity to quickly correct or cure mistakes. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
And you came in with a few seconds on the clock. You're in the lead. All right, Mr. Butler. We're going to see what you can do here.
Thank you, Chair Blackburn and Ranking Member Klobuchar and members of the subcommittee for the opportunity to testify today. For the opportunity to testify today about the need to better safeguard Americans' online data. My name is Alan Butler, and I'm the Executive Director at the Electronic Privacy Information Center. EPIC is an independent nonprofit research organization established in 1994 to secure the right to privacy in the digital age for all people. 25 years ago, the Federal Trade Commission issued a report to Congress based on its research of privacy risks in the online marketplace. The takeaway was clear. Self-regulation does not work, and we need legislation to ensure adequate protection for Americans online. In the decades since that report, we have seen our digital world expand and develop in amazing ways. But without strong privacy protections, we have seen an alarming expansion of surveillance and data abuses online that threaten our rights and subvert our most fundamental values of autonomy and freedom. The status quo is untenable. If the law allows a company to scrape images of all of us to build a universal facial recognition database, while another company tracks every site we visit to build invasive profiles, and yet another company buys and sells our logs of daily movements, do we have privacy protection at all? I believe any reasonable person would say no, and would demand that our lawmakers step in to fix this broken system. In my testimony today, I will describe the current state of state privacy law and identify the areas where federal leadership would be most impactful. Privacy is a fundamental right, and Americans deserve a law that actually protects our data. In the absence of action by Congress, states have stepped in to advance digital rights in the information age. This has been an important catalyst for change, but there's more work ahead to establish robust privacy standards. There is significant bipartisan agreement across party and state lines about the need for privacy protection and the core principles that should shape the law. So our attention at the federal level should be on establishing clear rules of the road to make our digital world safer and more secure. What we cannot do is pass a weak federal standard that prevents states from responding to new challenges and emerging threats in the future. A federal privacy law should set a consistent and robust standard for protection while preserving flexibility for states in the future. Over the past 7 years, 19 states have passed comprehensive data privacy laws, and many states have also passed bills aimed at preventing specific privacy harms. Most of these state laws follow a common framework and have many of the key components of any modern privacy law. But unfortunately, these laws do very little to actually limit abusive data practices and to protect privacy. In a recent report, EPIC analyzed these laws in detail and graded each of them. 8 received Fs and none received an A. So what went wrong? The tech industry has invested heavily in state lobbying to water down the substantive protections, narrow their scope, and add exceptions that swallow the rules. But over the last 2 years, we have seen stronger state proposals, building off the bipartisan framework that Congress created in 2019 and 2021. The Maryland Online Data Privacy Act, for example, passed last year. It builds on existing state laws and incorporates strong data minimization protections and a ban on the sale of sensitive data. Inspired by Maryland's success, 10 states have introduced bills with strong data minimization rules this year. Several states that originally passed weak privacy laws have revisited and amended their laws to strengthen their protection. Any federal privacy proposal should have a strong data minimization rule, include heightened protections for sensitive data, and establish robust enforcement mechanisms. Data minimization offers a practical solution to our broken internet ecosystem. Instead of allowing data collectors to dictate privacy terms, data minimization rules set clear standards to limit the processing of our data. Companies can collect the data they need to provide the services we want. This standard better aligns businesses' conduct with what consumers expect and stops abusive data practices like third-party tracking and profiling. Enhanced protections can also ensure that our most sensitive data remains confidential and secure. So much information about us that has traditionally remained private is now captured in digital form. Our health records, our movements, our biometrics, and genetic markers, even the data about our children. These records are frequently targeted by hackers and scammers and should be locked down and secure. Strong privacy standards should also be backed up by robust enforcement, including the 3-tiered approach that we saw in the federal bill. And while state and federal enforcement is essential, the scope of data collection online is simply too vast for any one entity to regulate. And that is why private rights of action with enforceable court orders are so important. EPIC has been calling on Congress to pass a strong privacy law to protect all Americans for the past 25 years. We are grateful that the subcommittee is turning its attention to this important issue, and we urge federal lawmakers to learn from states' experience. I thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to your questions.
And Mr. Levine, you're recognized.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Sam Levine, and I'm a senior fellow at Berkeley Center for Consumer Law and Economic Justice. Until January, I led the FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection. Today, protecting Americans' personal information is about much more than privacy. It's about whether we can afford essential goods, whether we can be profiled based on our political or religious beliefs, and whether the next generation will grow up addicted to screens. I'll be focusing on 3 real-world threats that unchecked privacy abuses are fueling. Threats to economic fairness, democratic freedoms, and the safety of kids and teens. Let's start with economic fairness. On a recent earnings call, Delta Airlines executives boasted they could soon raise prices on plane tickets, not by adding value, but through a new formula: stop matching competitors' prices, unbundle basic services, and charge each passenger the most they're willing to pay. Investors cheered the news, calling this the holy grail. But we should call it what it is: personalized price gouging. And it's only possible because weak privacy protections are allowing companies to track our behavior and predict how much we can be pushed to pay. This practice, also known as surveillance pricing, is spreading. More and more businesses are looking to price everyday goods, from groceries to hardware, the way airlines are pricing tickets. And let's be clear, their goal is not to lower prices. It's to charge each person as much as possible. And the people hit hardest will be those with the fewest options: a parent buying baby formula, a senior filling a prescription, or a family booking last-minute travel to a funeral. Unchecked data collection is moving us from a world of one product, one price, to one person, one price. And if we don't act, the shift will be costly. Unchecked data collection is also putting our democratic freedoms at risk. Last year, the federal government alleged that an entity was tracking Americans' movements and profiling them into categories like Wisconsin Christian churchgoers, likely Republican voters, and restaurant visitor during COVID quarantine. This was not a foreign adversary. This was a U.S. data broker. The FTC sued to halt these practices. That lawsuit should be a wake-up call. No American should be profiled based on their politics, their religion, or their stance on COVID lockdowns. Yet without strong data protections, that's exactly what brokers are doing. Political and religious freedom cannot thrive in a society where our movements, beliefs, and behaviors are tracked, recorded, and then sold to the highest bidder. We need to act. We also need to act to protect our next generation. Over the past 2 decades, Big Tech has been running a massive experiment on our children: what excites them, what enrages them, and what holds their attention. The result is a youth mental health crisis. Weak data privacy is powering these harms. Social media companies collect personal data to power their ad-driven business models. More screen time means more revenue and more insights into how to keep kids hooked. It's a dangerous feedback loop that profits from addiction, and it's getting worse. Today, companies are building AI chatbots engineered to earn kids' trust and keep them engaged. And that means serving up content that's provocative, obscene, and sometimes dangerous. One bot reportedly told a teen that self-harm feels good. Another offered lessons on how kids can hide drugs and alcohol and how to set the mood for sex with an adult. You might expect these incidents to prompt a pause, but the opposite is happening. The same tech giants that have been putting kids at risk for years are now racing to roll out AI chatbots. And respectfully, they are doing so because Congress is not telling them they need to stop. That must change. Across each of these threats, the common thread is weak data protection. But we can fight back. Strong privacy laws can stop companies from using personal data to set individualized prices, ban the profiling of Americans based on sensitive information, and end the surveillance that's fueling an endless cycle of harm to kids and teens. Thank you for holding this important hearing today, and I look forward to taking your questions.
And you win the gold medal.
Thank you.
Yes, I think it was 23 seconds left. We're going to move to questions, and Senator Klobuchar, I will let you begin.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. So, as I discussed earlier, there have been a number of bipartisan proposals for a federal data privacy law that have been introduced over the years, including the American.
All right, we're going to pull away from this as the senators continue their questioning on this privacy, technology, and law hearing, protecting the virtual you. called Safeguarding Americans' Online Data. We'll go back to it and, of course, let you know anything that happens during that meeting. But let's go to our own reporter, Danielle Stein, who has been in that heat again for day 2 of pads practice at Panthers practice, of course. Man, a lot going on, obviously, yesterday. Today, let's talk about the overall mood of practice. I know there were some skirmishes there have been in recent weeks, but everything kind of leads up to FanFest Saturday and then joint practices with the Cleveland Browns next week. So let's start with the mood today in practice, Danielle.
Yeah, like you mentioned, we've been going into training camp for the past couple weeks at this point now, but this was just the second day that the players have put pads on, and that innately just makes everything more competitive because it's starting to feel a little bit more like a real-life situation once you get those pads on. We saw the other day, the first day pads came on already, our first scuffle of the summer between Chuba Hubbard and Trevin Wallace. We didn't really see anything major come out today. Chuba had a little push at one point when he was actually defending Bryce Young on a play, but overall you could just see that level of competition really starting to heat up. The guys were really starting to get into their form, it seems like, so just these different plays and routes seem like they're coming together much more fluidly than we had been seeing a little bit at the start. A good observation, everyone of course wants to hear this, is T-Mac, that rookie wide receiver that they got in the first round this year. He was looking really good today. Dave Canales even said, you know, he's had a bit of an up and down training camp, but today he looked like he made a really good step. You can see some videos circulating online already. He had a nice one-handed grab on a pass thrown by Bryce Young. So that connection, again, is just building day after day, and he's making it seem to be pretty good as a weapon for them so far.
Yeah, it's great to see those type of catches in training camp, because then they usually make them themselves known or seen during the season as well. Danielle, let's talk about contract extensions. There's a number of guys that are playing for their football lives here in Carolina, at least, or maybe elsewhere around the league. Obviously, a lot of guys that probably want to stay in Charlotte, though. Let's talk about some of the most notable ones that hopefully want that contract extension here in Charlotte.
Yeah, that is the story of the day in my eyes. After we had the post-game press conferences, where we heard from Dave Canales as well as a couple players, we had Brant Tillis come in, and he is the executive vice president of football operations. So he's the guy that is helping to restructure some of these contracts, looking specifically at the O-line. That's where you're going to see the two biggest storylines right now. With Ike Ekwonu, they just picked up his fifth-year option right now, so they do know that they have him. They don't feel like there's an immediate pressure right now to get a new deal, because they actually said we think his trajectory is still going up in terms of play, so that's obviously going to be affecting how much money they end up giving him. That's him on the left. On the right side, though, the situation's a little bit different. Taylor Moton, he is in his 9th season here with the Carolina Panthers. He came up to the podium and spoke about how this is his final year under contract until he becomes a free agent, and we're going to have more from him at 4 coming up in a little bit, but he was really emotional actually talking about his time here in Carolina, what it's meant to him, how he's basically put his blood, sweat, tears, started a family in this city. So you could just see that raw and real feeling coming out, and that's all going to be hinging on whether or not the Panthers decide to sign him. Now, he has been a pretty consistent piece on the O-line for quite a few years at this point. He hasn't made that Pro Bowl yet. He does feel like he is a player of that caliber, so he's really hoping to come in this year on his 9th season in the NFL and really prove his worth to this team that means so much to him.
Love that, Danielle. I know it might be a little too early to talk about position battles, but they do start in training camp, right? And I know the roster, 50-plus man roster, starting to dwindle down in terms of what they like to see for that roster as they get into the preseason here pretty soon. I think one of the biggest spots, you highlighted this on X, by the way. Follow Danielle Stein on X. She has some great posts, but I think one of their best pickups was the rookie kicker Ryan Fitzgerald. I mean, the man does not miss. He's as good as anyone in the league right now. I know he's just a rookie, but didn't miss much last year at Florida State University. Except we can talk about kicker, but any other position battles that you're kind of looking at that might be interesting. I mean, the wide receiver room is much more deep this year. That'll be interesting as well. So, what are coaches kind of talking about now in terms of the depth chart?
Yeah, right now, I mean, the kicker was the one I highlighted today. I talked to Ryan after practice, and he said, I'm someone who loves competition, so that's really good. He's going up against Matthew Wright, who's a bit of a NFL journeyman throughout his career. So it's basically a veteran going up against a rookie to see who's going to be landing that starting spot. Ryan's excited. He's coming in with a lot of really good energy. He played 6 years in college, so it's not like he's fully a rookie. He has a lot of experience coming in on his own too. So that one is definitely playing out really well in front of us, and just as media members getting to watch, going through the skinnies, it's been fun to see and kind of track who's kicking where. But like you mentioned, the receiver room is definitely that biggest spot that people are looking at. Hunter Renfrow is the name on everyone's mouths these days. He has been excelling during training camp so far. He actually was wearing street clothes today, did not participate in training camp practice today. He is dealing with a bit of a hamstring thing, but Dave Canales did say that if they were to have played a game tonight, he would have been healthy and good enough to go. I think the big question is Hunter Renfrow going to be making this team in the end in that receiving core?
Last thing, Danielle, I want to talk about, because I know that Coach Canales talked about FanFest this Saturday. You know, these practices have been closed to fans. Normally, fans are kind of allowed out there. I know this is, abnormal as they are building and renovating the practice fields and things like that out there. Let's talk about, what that looks like in terms of FanFest Saturday. And then, if you can, set the scene for us with joint practices with the Cleveland Browns, because there's been a lot of talk, obviously, about their quarterback room, Shedeur Sanders, and what that team is going to look like as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, coming on Saturday, it will actually be the fans' first time. They will get a close-up look, and Dave Canales wants to really deliver this for the fans because he knows and feels bad that they haven't been able to come out to these training camp days. So FanFest, he said, you can expect full pads. You can expect us going as full out as we have been in any of these other closed door to the fans training camp sessions. So we can expect to see all of that. They said we really want to give the fans a look at what this team is going to be like. So I think it should be a lot of excitement for these fans, so hopefully you want to come out to Bank of America Stadium on a Saturday night and get their first look at the team. And this is all, of course, leading up to their first preseason game next week with Browns coming to town. Big storylines there, of course, with their really deep receiving room. Shedeur Sanders, of course, I saw today he went 9 for 9, 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions during one stretch of practice today. So Shedeur is definitely heating up in that battle with 5 of them in their room, as well as another rookie in Dylan Gabriel as well, who are also trying to make their names known on that Browns roster. It's going to be interesting to see who's traveling here next week and who's going to be squaring up against Bryce Young in those battles.
A great cap there, Danielle, and a great segue, because obviously tomorrow night going to be NFL preseason game, the first game held in Canton, Ohio for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Going to be the Chargers-Lions right here on NBC, by the way, 7 p.m. Eastern. Excited to get football kicked off Thursday. I said last week, Danielle, that last Thursday was the last Thursday without football until February. Just let that sink in. That's pretty cool.
And
appreciate it.
We will enjoy every Thursday and every Sunday from here on out.
I love it. And then pretty soon Saturday as well. Making a weekend of it. Danielle Stein reporting for us, one of our amazing sports talents here at WCNC. Danielle, we'll see you on the news here tonight at 5, 6, and 11.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right, let's wrap things up there, and we're going to go now. We already know the NTSB has had a busy week. They are obviously looking at that crash that killed 6 on 485 just this weekend on Saturday. There is a survivor in the hospital, a 16-year-old that we have been trying to keep track of in terms of her recovery and the victims' families. And in fact, we do have some breaking news. We're going to go to an NTSB hearing about this January mid-air collision. Instead now, though, getting an update from CMPD, from the Freedom Division, conducting a criminal investigation. They are saying right now that this resulted in a charge of communicating threats against a CMPD officer, that is Jasmine Featherstone. Now, what we're told from this release is that just on Tuesday, yesterday, shortly after 7 p.m., officers responded to an assault with a deadly weapon. Apparently no injury, but there was a call for service in the Freedom Division area. The 911 call reported that they were being threatened by a female. That victim stated that a family member of the female pointed a firearm at her, made additional threats. Through this, it says that a warrant was issued for a person at that residence, and now they are conducting a simultaneous investigation. Officer Featherstone is currently on unpaid administrative leave pending the outcome of the internal investigation. It says that all parties involved were voluntarily interviewed by detectives at the law enforcement center. And it says that this happened at the conclusion of interviews. The victim pursued criminal charges with the Mecklenburg County Magistrate. A criminal summons was issued for communicating threats against Officer Featherstone. So this was this person, apparently Sean Marie Rice, 54, assault by pointing a gun, damage to property, and communicating threats. So as I said, Officer Featherstone currently on unpaid administrative leave pending the outcome of this internal investigation. The chief did comment on these, Chief Johnny Jennings, saying the criminal charge filed against Officer Featherstone is concerning. Our department holds all officers to the highest standards of conduct on and off duty, will not tolerate actions and that compromise public trust or the integrity of this agency. Officers are held to the same laws they are sworn to uphold, and we remain committed to accountability, end quote. So again, this is in response to the Freedom Division of the CMP of Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department's Freedom Division that a criminal investigation is ongoing, resulting in a charge of communicating threats against CMPD officer Jasmine Featherstone. We'll get more updates from this and hopefully more details from CMPD as we make our way towards the 4, 5, and 6 o'clock news. But for now, we will go back, I do believe, to this NTSB hearing on the mid-air collision that happened in January over D.C. skies.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Do you recall if, while serving on the helicopter working group, did the group ever propose changes to the helicopter route structure, which we've kind of already discussed Route 4, so we understand that portion. But did the group ever propose changes or any other operational safety improvement change recommendations that would pertain to operations within the DCA Class Bravo airspace?
Yeah, we proposed several others. We proposed lateral boundary changes to some of the zones, and in addition, altitude changes to certain zones and routes.
Was there any formal, safety risk management process conducted in assessing these change proposals?
Yes, and I forgot we did publish a new transition point further away from the airport for the helicopter users. Yes, with the changes, we conducted a formal safety risk management panel.
Do you recall the response provided or the disposition of any of the group's recommendations? And if so, how or from whom were you informed or advised?
We conducted the safety risk management panel after multiple rounds of meetings with the user groups and making adjustments as needed and settled on a final product. We conducted the safety risk management panel, and I believe the final document, there was no hazards identified with the changes that we were going to make. With that, since there was no changes left to make, we had environmental study done. That was completed, and the last part was charting the changes that we had proposed.
I'd like to get back to that Government Accountability Office proposal about the noise abatement in just a minute. But Mr. Fuller, having heard this information, do you recall ever being made aware of these proposals or having advised management at the district or facility level in responding to these proposals?
I believe the specific proposal he's discussing was in 2022, 2023, sometime around that frame. And those helicopter chart changes were made and weren't effectuated.
Okay, in 2019, this is what we were talking about just a minute ago. The Government Accountability Office was tasked with conducting a study into the problem of helicopter noise over the Washington, D.C. area after a spike in community noise complaints. It is our understanding that the DCA Helicopter Work Group reviewed these findings from the study and developed a series of recommended changes to the Baltimore-Washington helicopter route chart which were presented at a helicopter symposium held in November of 2022. What are some of the changes?
All right, having some issues with our feed. Just give us a couple of minutes as we try and fix this feed. But it's happened back in the later part of January. Yesterday, actually, we covered this during our 5 and 6 o'clock news, just reminding folks that the NTSB was looking at this and that they were going to have this hearing today to find out more. Obviously, part of the flight crew was based in Charlotte as well. So I do believe we have the feed back up. We're going to go back to it now.
To, I believe it was out to a 30 nautical mile range from DCA. The regional administrator had come to DCA and shared the study with us and asked us to take a look at it and see, hey, is there anything better the FAA could do with noise? The local helicopter work group took that information, reviewed it, and then looked at our own internal safety reporting that we had and saw some areas where, hey, we could make this better. So we can improve noise and improve safety all in the same scope. So with that, we came up with the proposed changes that were implemented in June of 2023.
Upon reviewing your proposal during the helicopter symposium, I noticed that you had, Mr. Allen, your facility had hoped to chart hotspots on the Baltimore-Washington helicopter chart. Can you speak a little bit about what are the hotspots? What are hotspots, first of all? And what were you trying to do by requesting them to be put onto the helicopter chart?
So hotspots are an airport diagram depiction to show areas of concern on an airfield map. We were attempting to, since we were not able to change Route 4 and the proximity of some of the other routes or heliports or hospitals, we, if we weren't able to change them or, we can't move a hospital, then let's at least draw attention to it for the users. So our attempt was to take something similar on an airport diagram, apply it to the VFR helicopter chart, and draw attention to it since we weren't able to change the location of helipads or, in this instance, also a route.
Mr. Allen, what was the feedback received by from some of the attending helicopter users about the proposal to add hotspots to the Baltimore-Washington helicopter route chart?
From my recollection, everybody was satisfied with, adding an additional layer of safety to the helicopter map.
Mr. Allen, as we spoke before, you mentioned that there was a safety risk management panel convened in approximately April 2023 to assess the potential risk of these proposed helicopter route chart changes to include the hotspots. You already kind of summarized. Well, could you please clarify, what was the findings? What were the findings of this panel? And did the panel agree with the proposal to chart these hotspots?
The safety risk management panel concurred with all the proposals and identified no hazard.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, this is for you. FAA order, Joint Order 7210.3 outlines the procedures for requesting changes to aeronautical charting. What steps did your office take to address the request to chart the hot spots on the Baltimore-Washington helicopter route chart? And was there a formal response to the request?
Yeah, thank you. So Aeronautical Information Services did receive a request for multiple chart changes to the Baltimore-Washington helicopter route chart in June of 2023, we implemented all of the changes, as Mr. Fuller mentioned, with the exception of the addition of hotspots. Hotspots are associated with ground or surface movement and are not within the VFR aeronautical chart specification.
Is your group able to give suggestions as how to implement the intent of a hotspot without making it called a hotspot?
Could you clarify the question?
So I understand that hotspots are normally used for surface areas of confliction maybe, and that they want to bring attention to it. So it seems to us that this is something that maybe is this a new idea to try to highlight an area that is airborne, that is a potential for a conflict? Is there a way or a process that it could be put on the chart without calling it a hotspot?
Absolutely. Aeronautical Information Services hosts a biannual aeronautical charting meeting. Anyone, public, industry, is welcome to come and submit a recommendation document. It's discussed amongst our aviation peers, stakeholders, the military, the FAA, and ultimately it's decided whether or not to implement the recommended change. So that would be one way of having a new charting symbol or something, some new feature charted.
Do you know if that information was passed back to the facility?
I don't have evidence to confirm it. However, it is the standard operating procedure to always suggest that as a conduit to have a chart change.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll pass it to Van. Thank you.
Okay, before I get into ADSB policies and procedures in the airspace, I have a couple of follow-up questions I'd like to ask. Mr. Allen or Mr. Fuller, the FAA said that earlier that the altitudes on helicopter routes were recommended altitudes. So does that mean those operating on those altitudes can vary on the route unless otherwise instructed by ATC?
Yes, those are recommended altitudes on the charts. They are not regulatory in nature. These are VFR charts. Those aircraft do have a requirement to maintain clear of clouds, avoid other aircraft, maneuver as necessary. If air traffic needs a specific hard altitude in Class B airspace, they will assign it. There are some helicopter charted areas that only mention an altitude at or above or at or below and don't have a finite altitude for helicopters to maintain. And I'll pause here and see if Mr. Stowe would like to provide additional information based on his technical knowledge.
Yes, that would be accurate, especially considering there are specific pilot requirements for Title 14 CFR 91119. There may be other pilot limitations, such as Part 135 operators, for example, have a minimum safe altitude of 300 feet, so they would be unable to comply. It would be the expectation of air traffic that if, in the event, a pilot would require a different altitude than one that's specifically assigned, that they're cleared on or assigned, that they would advise air traffic.
So if a pilot's not assigned an altitude but cleared for the route, should they consider that hard altitude symbology on the chart as their assigned altitude?
I think it would. I would have to review the specific phraseology and the details. To refer back to the helicopter route charting program, I think it's the subparagraph B, or in the initial part of the paragraph. It may also be dependent on any specific language in a letter of agreement with certain operators. So it
All right. right, got our feed blown out with the audio there. We'll go back to it in a second if we can. We can see that we do have Senate discussions that are ongoing as well at the same time that this judiciary hearing is going on, as well as the other hearing on people's personal online data. Let's go to the Senate discussions now. We'll learn more from this as we listen in with you.
So the Republicans, we call it big bad bill. Yeah. Their big bad bill also implemented new work reporting requirements for Medicaid. See, this comes from the attitude that people who are on Medicaid somehow don't deserve it. And so we're going to place all kinds of requirements because we think that people are just taking advantage of these programs. Not that they need it, not that they use it so that they can actually go to work. So these reporting requirements that are so burdensome that it results in people being kicked off this care, their Medicaid care, even if they meet the new requirements. So they're going to impose all these work requirements. For example, in 2018, Arkansas implemented work requirements for their Medicaid recipients. It flowed again from this idea that somehow people on Medicaid should have to come forward and tell the bureaucrats on a regular basis that they're trying to find work, that they're working, etc. Well, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, 18,000 people, or 25% of the population in Arkansas subject to the work requirements, etc., lost health care coverage as a result. And here's what happened. The vast majority of those who lost coverage met the underlying requirements, but were unable to overcome the bureaucratic reporting process the state required. A process that cost the state millions of dollars to implement because they had to create an entire bureaucracy to keep track of everybody. So unsurprisingly, those who lost Medicaid coverage in Arkansas were less likely to be able to afford medication, delayed needed care, and struggled to pay off medical debt as a result. So without health care coverage, they ended up going to emergency care, straining the hospitals, providing such care. I mean, that's common sense, don't you think, that that would happen? The negative experience in Arkansas didn't stop the Senate Republicans recently from imposing similar requirements on Medicaid recipients nationwide. See, they didn't learn from the experience in Arkansas that you create this massive bureaucracy, kicks thousands of people who actually met the requirements to become Medicaid recipients but couldn't meet the continuous bureaucratic requirements. But no lesson learned there. So now the Republican senators decide that they should impose these kinds of requirements nationwide. The Senate Republicans, millions of Americans will lose their Medicaid coverage, which is what happened in Arkansas. Republicans know thousands of their constituents will meet this fate. In fact, one of my Republican colleagues said that his constituents were going to lose their Medicaid coverage, and he thought that was unconscionable. So he's not even running for re-election. But his colleagues didn't learn from what happened in Arkansas, didn't listen to their